European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. Well, that was very interesting conversation there with Charlie Mullins, wasn't it? Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Just not paying the national insurance extra for employers. Is that an option? Again, I'm all for civil disobedience where it is necessary to fight for your basic civil liberties and your basic rights. But I mean, I'm not sure not paying your taxes should be an option for people. Anyway, we'll be talking more about that, no doubt. Lots to talk about today. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Always great to have your company, whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Whichever it is great to have you on board. I'm with you live all the way until 1 o'clock. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the White House confirming that a journalist was accidentally added to a secret group chat about classified military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. In the chat, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth complains about pathetic European freeloading. Now, a lot of people might say, this is just something going on in the American government. What do we care? There are massive implications for us here in the UK, not least in terms of our own military and intelligence sharing. Should we be sharing stuff which is going to end up on a message chat that's totally and utterly insecure and is going to end up in the hands of not just journalists, but, well, Vladimir Putin, the Iranians, the Chinese or anyone else? I would love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Plus, Labour are going to be accused of turning a blind eye to slavery if they block a bid to ban ministers from buying solar panels for schools and hospitals. It's Ed Miliband behind this, of course, made with forced labour in China. MPs want to vote on this. Labour basically saying they won't actually back this bid to add extra safeguards. But let's face it, if you're buying your solar panels from China, odds are they've been made by Uyghurs in slave labour camps. Apparently, not an issue so much when it comes to green energy, because everyone's freedom and everyone's democratic rights are completely eroded by the need for net zero, are they not? Plus, Chancellor H. Reeves has been thrown under the bus by Transport Secretary Heidi Allen after she said she hadn't accepted any freebies since she became an MP because she's been too busy working to attend concerts. This, as it's now been revealed, and not only did the Chancellor accept freebie concerts to Sabrina Carpenter concert tickets, she's also accepted 270 quid's worth of tickets for the National Theatre. Does the woman ever stay in and do her job? Maybe she should be doing that Economics 101 degree that we've all suggested she does. Plus, as you've just been hearing, Pimlico Plumbers founder Charlie Mullins, now a major Reform UK donor, despite being a serious Ramona, was threatened with being stripped of his OBE over a social media attack on Sir Sadiq Khan and others. The Honours Committee accused Mullins of bringing the honours system into disrepute. I don't think it's actually possible for the honours system to be brought into any more disrepute than it already is in. But there we are. Anyway, all of that coming up. Plenty more besides. Lots of top guests, including the wonderful Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, who joins us today as well. Very, very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Lots to talk about. I want to start with this extraordinary leak in America. Now, a lot of people will be saying, oh, this is an American government story. But it isn't. It has implications for Britain, for the whole of America, for the whole of Europe and elsewhere. So the Trump administration basically, there's an investigation on them after a journalist, a very senior journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine, was accidentally added to a group chat on Signal, which included the US Vice President J.D. Vance, the Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth, the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and the Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. This is pretty much as senior as it gets when it comes to defence intelligence. And the discussion was all about the plan to conduct airstrikes on Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. Those strikes did then go ahead a few hours later. But it meant that this journalist, quite by accident, knew about these plans in advance. It's also thought that actually someone else who was in the group chat was the US envoy on Ukraine, Mr. Golf Buddy of Donald Trump, who was in Russia at the time, when using presumably an insecure phone, which could easily have been hacked. We know that's what the Russians do. It's what we would do with Russians in the country. And in this, we learned about in this exchange. We learnt about that there was going to be this airstrike, but we didn't. This wasn't published until yesterday by Jeffrey Goldberg. He also basically redacted huge sections of this conversation that could reveal the names of CIA agents or figures or anything that could be a security breach. So he's merely exposing the fact that there was this conversation. But crucially in this conversation, I think some of those telling things that really affect us is J.D. Vance, the Vice President, saying, I think we're making a mistake carrying this out. He says 3% of US trade runs through the Suez Canal, which is where these strikes were affected. 40% of European trade does. There's a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. I mean, he also says to the Defence Secretary later, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. The Defence Secretary, Peter Hegseth, replies, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. And then goes on about doing it. So what we've learnt here is massively insecure conversations going on, not being kept, not being, again, this is similar to WhatsApp chats, Matt Hancock style during lockdown, but this is a national security issue. They view this as senior figures of the Trump administration view the Europeans as freeloading, don't see why they should help us out by trying to stop bombs hitting commercial shipping in the Suez Canal, because most American shipping doesn't go through the Suez Canal. They've got more concern with the Panama Canal and others. And just this general view of Europe. Now, the issues here are huge, are they not, Tom?
Absolutely. This story is extraordinary. How it came about is extraordinary. The fact that this gentleman, Jeffrey Goldberg, who's the sort of editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine, very liberal magazine, opposed to pretty much everything that the Trump administration is doing on national security and foreign affairs. It would be like you accidentally being added to like the number 10 WhatsApp group. Like this is so it was
do you know what? I wouldn't want to see it. Wouldn't want to know how bad it was.
I imagine it'd be quite dull, if anything. But it's was so extraordinary that the journalist in question didn't believe it was real for quite a long time, but he thought this must be someone's trying to entrap me, someone's trying to trick me, this is some kind of disinformation thing, because not only was it so ridiculous that he'd been added to this thing, the things that they were talking about, according to his report, talking about times, places, targets. Pete Hegseth has come out and said we weren't discussing war plans. I don't know what those are if they're not war plans.
Well, actually,
this is a huge breach.
We have a clip here, actually. This is a clip of the US Secretary of Defence. He's talking to reporters in Hawaii when he was challenged about this, and extraordinarily, this is what he had to say.
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The NSC said it was authentic.
So it's been confirmed that this was authentic, and yeah, he's completely denying. I mean, so he's lying to reporters blatantly there. Again, this is something that Donald Trump does. Again, you know, did I say Zelensky was a dictator? I mean, yeah, it's on camera, mate. He's literally on camera. We are in just a bizarre situation where, you know, up is down, black is white, you know, right is wrong here. There were lots of question marks over Peter Hegseth's appointment anyway. He's got a track record in the military. He's, you know, very well educated. People describing him as just he was a Fox News anchor. That's unfair characterisation of his background and his qualifications. But you know, you did have that chat. It is real, and to deny it then, I mean, again, if I were the journalist Jeffrey Goldberg, I would probably sue for libel at that point because he's accusing you of lying in your article. I mean, and you'd win. Let's be honest. But the issues here is what they're saying publicly in the White House about, hey, you know, Europe, you need to pay your way, and you know, this is not just it's not performative. Yeah. This is what they really think, and that's not a bad thing. But loathing, say, European freeloading. The reason why the Americans would be bombing the Houthi rebels in Yemen is because they are bombing commercial shipping, and America basically rules the seas around the world, and part of their power is because they can control where any ship goes and what it does and who is on that ship. That is literally, that's naval power that we had in the 19th century, and it's the naval power that the US has now. It is actually a key bedrock of their power as a military force and as an economic force as well, given that pretty much every single thing we buy and sell moves by shipping, not by plane. So it is just a mischaracterization situation. But my biggest worry about this is, should we be sharing a lot of our intel with Donald Trump? There have already been concerns about what Donald Trump would say to Vladimir Putin, because he literally just has no filter, has no understanding of what he can and can't say. And we know that people at senior levels, even other party leaders here in the UK, they get given briefings in advance of military strikes, they get given security briefings where they are, you know, you have to sign the Official Secrets Act. You breach that, you're in prison. End of. You're in prison. You are not allowed to say that stuff out loud. That is part of how we keep our country secure. The big concern here is these are the senior people who are in charge of not just keeping America safe, keeping the world safe. Yeah, what they do dealing with Ukraine, Russia, with Middle East is vital for our safety and the world's safety. These people are playing at this stuff. This is an insecure messaging system. Signal is not completely secure. The fact that someone was added and no one noticed who this guy was, a supposedly very small level of people, high level but small group of people, suggests that, you know, it's just that our information that goes to America is no longer secure. Should we be limiting our intelligence, especially our military intelligence, sharing with America?
Well, one would hope that in terms of the more kind of formal relationship, in terms of the actual people who kind of staff the administration, that they're not going, it's not like at every level that some sort of breach has been created. It is also worth saying that, of course, we have seen things like this in the past, maybe not quite so colourful, people using all these emojis to talk about bombs dropping and all these kinds of things. It's a slightly cruder version, but, you know, you could talk about Hillary Clinton's private email server. There's different things that we could talk about.
Well, she actually did say, well, you know, what the hell is this, didn't she? Are you kidding, she wrote, given that Donald Trump thought she should be locked up for using a private email server. Absolutely,
but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take this seriously. And I think there are questions to be asked about some of the people in the administration who, you know, Pete Hegseth might have this background more in the military and at Harvard and so on, but he was basically selected on the basis that Trump liked the cut of his jib when he was on cable news. Is that the best qualification for running the defence of the preeminent superpower in the world? Probably not.
There's a bit
of a personnel and a personnel problem with a lot of kind of populist movements. The message might be right and connecting with people, but you do need people who are colourful and can sell the policies that you're doing, but you also need competence. It's not. You shouldn't fetishise competence, but it is a kind of important part.
It is. It should be. It should be. It's necessary, but not sufficient. Yeah. I want to hear from you. Should Britain limit military intelligence sharing with the US after Trump's cabinet leaked a group chat about classified military strikes to a journalist? I want to know. Do you think this is not a big deal? Do you think there is a real concern here in terms of what it betrays about what top people in Trump's administration think about Europe? And again, they're not talking about the EU. They're talking about us as well. By the way, we did send our men and women to die on the front line in Afghanistan and Iraq for the Americans. I mean, small point worth making. I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also send us a message on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. But I'd also love to hear from you on anything else we're talking about as well, including the spring statement that's coming up tomorrow. It does feel like British politics is kind of in a holding pattern. We're kind of waiting to land at Heathrow while there's a power outage right now, aren't we? Before we actually get the actual information. It's not a budget. We're not. A lot of people say that we're going to be tax rises. There can't really be tax rises. It's not a budget. You can't announce tax rises in March ahead of April the 6th of the new tax year. That's not how it works. But the impact of the tax rises announced last October already. We're seeing, people's concern, businesses like Charlie Mullins, who set up Pimlico Plumbers and now WeFix, genuinely that concern about, the huge extra cost per employee of that national insurance rise, plus the minimum wage rise as well, plus all the other taxes going up. But basically everything's going to come down to Rachel Reeves fiddling the figures for her fiscal headroom. 9.9 billion she has. The idea that, that extra difference to 10 billion is it's not just money down the back of the sofa for them. But they're talking about, a surprise announcement of £2 billion to build 18,000 new social and affordable homes. This is something that's just been brought forward from the spending review in June. There's this talk that she has actually got more room, more headroom than was thought, because part of, this whole, we're going to cut international development spending, foreign aid, but we're going to spend more on defence. Some of that money on defence, like 2 billion of it, so that can be counted as capital spending, not day-to-day spending, so it doesn't go onto the books. This is just playing around with the numbers. How much you've got coming in and how much you need to spend going out and how much you've got optional to spend going out is what she's going to be dealing with. We know the people who are going to be most unhappy are going to be Labour backbenchers, though. No, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a couple of departments which will be ring-fenced as they usually are. Obviously, there's not going to be major swinging cuts or trims at defence or the health budget or what have you, but everywhere else is going to feel this. Yeah. And it's one of those things where we all know that the British state is very dysfunctional and inefficient, but at the same time, without a kind of plan to actually sort that problem out, cuts or at least not allowing for the budgets to grow in line with what they would usually grow with, is really going to be felt. You think about justice, you think how much the courts have ground to a halt, it's going to be a really bleak picture for them, and it's going to really bring them into conflict, not just with backbenchers but with the cabinet, basically, who are all going to be asked to find savings, who will already have been asked to find those savings and yet are already presiding over departments and services which are creaking. But it's also everyone's costs have gone up. So schools, hospitals, everyone, their costs have gone up because of the minimum wage, because of these increases to national insurance for employers. I did find it extraordinary last week, this big fuss about whether or not hospices should not have to be paying the national minimum, their national insurance increase. Why hospital? I mean, children's hospices, they say. I mean, let's go for the most crucial, wonderful charities, the most amazing, important work. But either we have either that is a rate that is paid or it's not a rate that is paid. It seems to be utterly bizarre that any element of charity or public sector should not be affected by that. The point is, you shouldn't put national insurance rate up for jobs. That would be the solution to that problem. Something else I find fascinating today is Labour has been accused of turning a blind eye to slavery. This over a bid by peers in the House of Lords. They pushed this amendment through, and it's going to go through the Commons. They're trying to put an amendment through on government plans to spend. This is the Great British Energy Bill. By the way, Great British Energy still doesn't do anything, still doesn't even there's nothing, it doesn't actually do anything yet. We're just paying a fortune for it, but it's going through Parliament. But as part of this, the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, wants to spend £180 million on a project to put solar panels on schools and hospitals. Deep sighs, everybody, but we'll play along with this. However, most solar panels in the world, and certainly the ones we get here in this country, are made in China. And the largest producer of solar panels in China is the province where the Uyghur people live. These are the Chinese Muslim people who are treated basically as second-class, fifth-class citizens in China. Many are basically forced to work for slave labour terms in slave labour camps. They have no freedoms, no whatsoever. They are working effectively for free, just for their room and board, as if they were slaves. The people on the left who were terribly concerned about slavery from 200 or 300 years ago, remarkably unbothered about it happening in the here and now when it comes to making their right-on virtue-signalling goods like solar panels. And it looks like the government is going to urge MPs to vote against this move, which is simply going to tighten up the restrictions and basically make it impossible for you to buy something that could be made by slave labour. It's really interesting how easily these values and virtue signalling are brought out, isn't it?
No, absolutely. The two just completely collide with one another on this issue. Because when Rachel Reeves or Ed Miliband talk about, we need to partner with China for the net zero transition, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about getting solar panels from Xinjiang, where people, as you say, are working under close to kind of forced labour conditions. And that's what they mean. And it's fascinating that they can't recognise the clear kind of ethical conflict that's going on here. So obsessed are they with net zero that they will happily go down this route, even though, like, you could plaster every roof in this city on solar panels. This is not how you're going to actually produce a stable energy source. Everyone knows
it's a lovely sunny day today, isn't it? I mean, not outside. I mean, I'm sure that clouds might be being a problem. It is so painful they're still going down this. I have to say, I don't see Rachel Reeves surviving this Parliament. They're going to let her do all the nasty stuff, and then Keir Starmer's going to go, off you go, and she's not going to have a bunch of people supporting her on the back benches, so she's not a risk to him. I don't see Ed Miliband surviving either, because, as we know, and we've been saying long before we had the problems with what's going on in terms of Ukraine and Trump's election and defence spending and all of that, long before that, and the more economic difficulties we're in right now, long before that, we know you can either have growth, you can either have a strong economy and industrialisation, or you can have net zero. You cannot have both. Full stop, end of, nothing to discuss. And even Radio 4 have started, and we're done an interview with Ed Miliband last week, even they've started realising the numbers don't add up. Do you think Ed Miliband survives the term, or even the year?
I mean, it would be incredible if he did manage to stand it out. I mean, so far he's managed to just sort of keep to the background. I mean, a lot of his plans and policies, certainly the focus on the green investment has disappeared, and he just has to kind of keep quiet about it. Heathrow expansion, something that he's very passionately been opposed to, he's just had to basically keep quiet about it. So either he just sort of stands there smiling whilst his policies are torn up one by one, or he goes. Yeah. It's going to be one of the two. Do you
want the red box that much, Ed Miliband? Come and talk to Auntie Julia about it, Ed. Come and talk to Auntie Julia. We could meet in one of your two kitchens and chat about it at any time. But I won't go in the eco car. Anyway, 10:22 is time. I want to hear from you about any of the topics we're talking about. Later on, we're going to be talking about CBeebies having a gender-neutral raccoon as a character. This is going to break my soul if there's any more of this madness going on. But I do want to hear from you in particular about whether Britain should limit military intelligence sharing with the US after Trump's cabinet leaked a group chat about classified military strikes to a journalist. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Are you surprised by what the JD Vance and Peter Hegseth and others were saying about Europe and about us? I'd love to know whether you're surprised or not. Was it? Yeah, it's what we thought anyway. It's a good thing we know. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
the body cam cameras at the moment, there will be a facility, I'm sure, that will not just capture that interaction when I arrest you, Ian, on the street if I'm a police officer, but will also scan your image and tell me exactly who you are. Are you on a watch list or not? So that facility, I'm sure, is coming. You walk through the camera, your face is scanned. If you're not on the watch list, that data is deleted from the database. That's really, really important.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Can't wait to speak to you and find out what you think about all the big stories today, and there are plenty, especially looking forward to the spring statement. Love to know what you think about this just extraordinary breach of military intelligence sharing in the US with little chats on Signal. I mean, you know, this is kind of worse than these very strange people who work at the MOD in serious levels who take confidential, top secret, eyes only documents home and then leave them at a bus stop or on a train, which they seem to do on a weekly basis. But these are the most senior level decision makers in American government having a casual chat about military strikes taking place in a matter of hours on Houthi rebels funded by Iran, a clear enemy of the West, not just the US, but Britain and Europe as well, and Israel, obviously, but also, by the way, allies with Russia. Allies with China. I mean, for goodness sake, this is serious stuff. Everyone's just laughing it off. We really shouldn't be. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's get some of your messages coming in on text and tweet. Ali says, we should be aligning ourselves with American values and stop sharing intelligence with Ukraine, if anything. Good God, Ali. Good God. I mean, really. Harriet says, no, keep sharing. It's at least sharing with our own. Mark says Britain needs to grow a backbone. Let's all just be honest for a moment. And Alistair says, yes, given the pro-Russian propaganda coming out of the White House and Envoy Witkoff, can we trust the US with any information regarding the Ukraine war? The ceasefire will be on Putin's terms. The question is, what has he got on Trump? I find it extraordinary how many people are believing either this was just done deliberately or it's just a hoax. It's neither of those things. Let's talk to Dave. He's in East Yorkshire. Hello, Dave. What do you make of these messages?
Well, I just disagree with what you just said. I think it's to invite somebody to a WhatsApp group. You need to have the name. It's not an easy thing to make a mistake on. And they've put out a message there that they want us to know without actually saying it directly to us. And
you're okay, but that's the line that we've had actually fed out from White House sources are putting out that line. This was Signal, not WhatsApp. But I'm sorry. We've all done it when you go to click on a name and you realise you clicked on the one below or the one above. It wasn't like this. I mean, there's no reason at all why the person setting this up wouldn't have the number of this guy.
No, I appreciate that, but they'll also have his name. And if you want to invite somebody, it's different to sending a text message to somebody you didn't mean to send a text message to invite them to a WhatsApp group. It takes a series of mistakes.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Signal, you would, same as what, you would literally set up a group and then you would add people to that group. And when you were talking in the group, he came up as just his initials. So he came up as just, what is his last name? JG. So he didn't come up as a particular name, which they wouldn't have spotted, or maybe had a similar name to someone else who was supposed to in the group. It's completely easy for this to have happened. There's no reason to think. We know that this did happen. No one other than Pete Hegseth is denying this has actually happened. Okay, so you think they deliberately leaked a chat, or they have leaked a fake chat, so that this guy was watching it happen, this chat, in real time, and you think they did all of that, put all of these fake names in, yeah?
And what was the biggest piece of information that he got that they think that Europe are freeloaders? Basically, this administration don't believe in anything that the European values have stood for over the last 30 years. They believe in securing your own borders, national identity, and national sovereignty.
Yep.
None of that is what. So why would they defend the current Europe? We're not talking about 80 years ago. We're not, and I know we went to war with them and all of these things, but that wasn't with this administration.
Yep.
and they've not taken anything to war.
I get your point about different values. I do get that, and especially the European Union. But they weren't talking about the EU. They were talking about the Europeans. They were including us. By the way, last time I looked, we voted for Brexit. I know Keir Starmer and most of the European Union don't seem to recognise that, but we did. But I get that. Why should they defend us? Because we're their allies and we are democratic allies, and we have defended them and their interests on many occasions, and our men and women have gone to war and have died for them because we are allies. We do actually share the same values. There's a difference between, like, we know, would you want more of a federal state? I mean, by the way, America is a federal state, for goodness sake. That's what the European Union want. I don't quite see what the massive difference is there. If people did want to cede their national sovereignty, we didn't want to. Lots of people in Europe don't want to, so it's probably not going to happen more. But I'm still trying to find it. Do you think that they made up this hoax message, this message chat on Signal, or do you think it was genuine and they wanted this guy to see it? Because the key thing is, this guy saw it. The main thing that came out of this was that he had 2 hours' notice of a major military strike. If someone else had been added by accident, or if he was not a loyal American citizen, he could have passed that information on to our enemies, and then American jet fighter pilots and people would have been at risk themselves. That's a massive security breach.
Risk from what? From the Houthi rebels? I'm not sure if they've got an air force.
No, the people who are... If you don't give people notice that you're carrying out airstrikes, unless, of course, you're Israel and you're trying to save lives in Gaza, which they do. But Americans don't give notice to Houthi rebels. Oh, we're going to come along and bomb you. If we know they've got missiles. We know they're able to strike many hundreds of miles away from Yemen because they're doing it in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal already.
Listen, they've got a message for us, and we've bought it, in my opinion. And until we become aligned with them, we don't expect any favours from this administration.
No, I accept that. I think Europe should defend I think we should raise our defence. I don't think taxpayers in America should be paying for our defence. We should pay for our own defence. I accept that. But we are nevertheless allies. Defending what?
What are we defending? We don't
democracy.
Care about our national borders. We don't care about democracy. The people.
I do.
Well, you don't. Well, I appreciate you do, Julia, and I agree with 90% of what you say. But you voted for closed now borders, reduced immigration, and for the last 20 years you'd have wanted that. Same as me, same as everybody else in this country. And what have we got? Exactly the opposite of what we voted for. So that's not democracy to me.
Well, there are new parties coming along which are speaking about that, and again, that's the same as what's happening in Europe, and it's the same as what's happening in America with Donald Trump's election. Democracy, you don't necessarily get exactly what you want immediately, and that's why you fight hard for it, and every new generation has to fight again for it. But that doesn't mean we aren't. That doesn't mean we don't have values that are worth defending.
I fully appreciate that, but the values that this government stands for, I'm not aligned to. And
okay.
And as much as my granddad was on Normandy Beach, June the 6th, 1944,
yep.
I share the same middle name as his name. I couldn't be more proud of him.
Yep.
But at this moment in time, I'd love to be the 51st state of America.
Very interesting. Discuss, everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Dave, really great call. Thank you so much. What do you make? Would you like to be, instead of Canada, Britain become the 51st state of Canada, of America? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Do you agree with Dave? Do you disagree with Dave? Love to hear your thoughts. Quick word from Tom Slater from Spiked Online.
No, I don't want us to be the 51st state. I love America, many things about it, but we are a nation with our own sovereignty, even if sometimes Donald Trump isn't as keen on those things when it comes to neighbours in other countries.
Indeed. Thank you for that. Love to hear your thoughts. Do get in touch on anything we're talking about. Up next, going to talk to Tory MP Andrew Rossendale about what we can expect in this spring statement. And why is it that Labour only cares about slavery when it happened to people 200 years ago and not when it's happening to people in China right now? Oh, because of solar panels. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Delighted to welcome Andrew Rossendale, Conservative MP, to the studio alongside Tom Slater, still here. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Just a quick first question. I want to talk about what's going on in this country, but first up, this revelation about basically Trump's cabinet leaking a group chat about classified military strikes on the Houthis to an American journalist 2 hours before those strikes took place. But crucially, not just the intelligence issue there, in terms of should we be sharing our own intelligence with these people, given that they are not being secure with that, but also the revelations that they're loathing of European freeloading and not wanting to help us out by protecting shipping lanes in the Suez Canal. What do you make of that American Trump White House view of us?
Well, first of all, I think it's really concerning that under the new administration in Washington, things like this are happening. It's quite frightening because this can lead to huge dangers for all of us. We share intelligence with the United States via Five Eyes, and so the idea that these things can be leaked to journalists and people can be put into groups and get classified information, frankly, is really concerning, and I hope that our government will be raising this with the United States. Are
you worried? I mean, I would have thought you'd largely be sympathetic in favour of the Trump administration
I
and all
am.
the things they're doing.
Oh, I am,
There's no Trump derangement syndrome.
No,
people
no.
If you say anything, if you said like, "Oh, I didn't like the colour of his suit," oh, Trump derangement syndrome. But the fact that it's these senior figures, I mean, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and the Defence Secretary, Hegseth, both of them talking about loathing. Loathing, that's a strong word.
I think they need to be more professional. I think the administration in Washington are doing things. They're shaking things up and they're doing things that the previous Biden administration could never have done. I think they are achieving things, but they need to be more professional. They are leading the world's greatest nation in many ways, a superpower, and they have to handle other countries that they work with, particularly allies, in a more professional way, and they haven't been doing that. So I think they need to sharpen up their act.
Do you want us, as Dave, our last caller, suggested, to become the 51st state of the USA?
No, but I'm very happy to see America join the Commonwealth. So I think that's not a bad idea, but there's no way we're ever going to become the 51st state, and I don't think Canada wants to become a state of the USA either.
No, they've made that rather clear, have they not?
Yes.
Let's talk about things at home. Tomorrow we've got the spring statement. Not an emergency budget, spring statement, according to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. We're not going to have tax rises, therefore, because it's not a budget, and we're just ahead of the next tax year starting in April. But, of course, there's a lot of talk about what spending cuts there need to be. A lot of talk about, again, fiscal headroom and rinky-dink things, so some of the defence spending will be put on, capital spending won't count as part of this and that, and a lot of moving around of things. But we know that we're going to expect the Office for Budget Responsibility to downgrade growth expectations. How bad is it, basically?
Well, there'll be a lot of smoke and mirrors tomorrow. The fact is they have badly misjudged the economy last year. They are spending money that we simply don't have. They're boring us into huge debts. We already had huge debts, but
you lot
even
did
greater.
that, if
Well,
you
of
don't mind
course
me
we
saying.
did. Well, we did, and that's because we borrowed so much money because of the COVID lockdowns and the pandemic, which I voted against.
You did?
I didn't agree with them, and I think it was a huge error. But I wasn't in the government. I was a backbencher, so I did vote against those things. Frankly, the people suffer. If governments waste money and spend money and tax people to the hilt, which is what this Labour government's doing, the people who will suffer in the end will be the British people. And that is what this government is doing to them. They're all about ideology, and it doesn't work. Socialist ideas always end in tears, and we're seeing the same thing play out once again.
Well, there's a lot of talk from Labour backbench that this is George Osborne-style austerity, because there's no austerity. We are seeing massive increases in spending, pretty much in the public sector, that talk about some cuts to a number of civil servants, to a number of to the budgets. But of course, that is a drop in the ocean compared to how much they increased since 2016, post-Brexit and lockdown and the like. If you were in government, if you were actually in government now, what would you be doing?
We have to reduce what we're spending. It is unsustainable to carry on spending the way we are spending, and to
Where would you cut?
believe...
Easy to say.
I would absolutely cut the public sector. The public sector is overbloated. It's grown enormously since the COVID pandemic. We have civil servants doing things that I think could be reduced. We certainly don't need any more diversity, equalities and inclusion officials in the public sector. We've got far too many of those. But there's a whole range of areas in the public sector that I think a future Conservative government should cut back on. The reality is that we have to live within our means. Now, Mrs Thatcher taught us that in the 1980s. You cannot spend what you don't have. You have to grow the economy. We need that kind of approach to actually get our feet back on the ground again.
We're told again and again by Keir Starmer and, of course, his Energy Secretary Ed Miliband that growing the economy is exactly what the Green Energy Plan is all about. There's a bill to set up Great British Energy, again, a company that, as far as I can tell, still does nothing but will cost us a fortune. It's not going to create any energy. And a lot of people thought, oh, it's going to be an energy company.
Sounds great, doesn't it? Yeah, Great British Energy.
It's going to be an energy company, brilliant, but they won't be fleecing us.
No energy coming from that.
No energy coming from that at all. A lot of hot air. The plan from the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband is to spend £180 million of your and my money on solar panels for schools and hospitals. Solar panels are pretty much largely in this world made by China. And the biggest area supplying Chinese solar panels is where Uyghur Muslims are kept in slave labour camps and forced to produce these goods. There's a vote in Parliament. The government is going to whip its MPs to vote against this Lord's amendment to the it's coming to the Commons today, meaning that solar panels made with forced labour should not be an option, and they could basically end up being used on the roofs of schools and hospitals in this country. What do you make of that very, very, very strong commitment to tackling slavery, very strong talk about even reparations for slavery for 200 years ago, but seemingly a rather lack of concern for slavery in the modern day that's happening here and now?
Well, there's two major points here. First of all, I'm very sceptical of buying anything from China, and I'm really concerned the long-term implications of buying solar panels from China and what that would lead to. But that's another issue. The key point here is that if we buy these solar panels from China, we are effectively funding slave labour. I think it's Xinjiang where this is happening. It's absolutely outrageous. We shouldn't be doing that. The reality is that there is a chance to block purchasing items like this that are produced through slave labour.
But basically, you need to be sure that they're not, as opposed to you think they're not, basically. That's kind of what it comes down to.
You do, but there is this, at the moment, this vote taking place, and the Labour Party apparently going to remove that amendment, which will open the door for effectively funding slave labour in China. Well, I don't think we should be doing that, and I think Labour should look at themselves in the mirror. I mean, it's supposed to be a party that believes in human rights. Well, if they believe in human rights, then they're not really showing it over this matter, are they?
Well, again, I just find the utter obsession with slavery that was ended by Britain a couple of hundred years ago, but not really caring about it now. Where are you on freebie gate? We've had all the free glasses, free suits, free tickets to watch Arsenal for Keir Starmer, free clothing for other people, including Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, as well. She has also admitted to taking £600 tickets to see Sabrina Carpenter in a box. She claimed it was a security issue. Now we know she's also accepted tickets to the National Theatre as well. Interestingly, the Transport Secretary, Haile Alexander, says she hasn't accepted any tickets since she's been a minister. Should anyone in government, should an MP get any freebies, and what have you taken?
So, freebies. I've never taken clothes. You know, I purchased my own spectacles. I didn't get them given to me.
Most people do.
Of course you do. But all MPs, all journalists, public figures get invited to special events. I get invited to loads of special events. Do you know something, Julia? Half the time, I'd rather be doing other things. But you accept because the organisers want you there. And I say, please come to our event, please come to our occasion. And when you look at actually the ticket price on some of these things, it's a lot of money, which you'd never want to spend that yourself particularly. So a public figure, like a Member of Parliament, I get invited, we all get invited, you get invited, I'm sure, to lots of things. So let's not go down this dark hole too deeply. The reality is, though, if you're a minister, it's slightly different. You do.
Police officers aren't allowed to accept freebies.
Well, I don't know what the rules are with the police. I suppose there are arguments about bribery. I don't know, but there is certainly any politician, particularly a minister, has to look very carefully at what they're accepting and how it looks.
And so much of it is how it looks, isn't it? Is this politically wise when you are cutting winter fuel payments, for instance, for low-income pensioners, not the lowest income, but pensioners nevertheless who are scrabbling to make ends meet, and then you're off to sit in a corporate box?
I get that, but I know from being an MP, I've been an MP now for my 7th term now, so over the years I've been invited to lots of things. Things are useful sometimes. You go to events, you meet people, you network, or you learn about an issue, therefore you can talk about it in Parliament. But the headline cost of these things, you and I both know, the real cost of these things are nothing really. It's just a seat somewhere and you're watching a show or watching an event.
The question is why those people want to invite you. Now, I'm not in a position, I don't have any power to make decisions over their business or their tax or anything like that. Rachel Reeves does, doesn't she?
Everyone wants a celebrity, everyone wants a top politician to be there to introduce them to people. This is the way the world works. And so I'm a little bit more relaxed about this. But I do think Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, and bearing in mind all the crazy things they've been taking, like spectacles and clothes and goodness knows what else, they should be a little bit more sensible in what they accept and what they don't accept.
Just finally, I want to ask you about the latest figures on Channel migrants. The arrivals in the first 3 months of this year has topped the arrivals in the first 3 months of last year. Because often when people make comparisons, what happens in July and what happens in January, very different because of the weather and the conditions in the Channel. 5,847 asylum seekers landed in the UK January, February, March. That's up from 5,435 the same period last year. Basically about another 400 odd people. That stopping the boats by Rishi Sunak didn't work, but smashing the gangs ain't working either.
No, smash the gangs. What happened to that? It's a load of promises that have turned out to be a load of hot air. And while this is happening, Julia, the British people are getting very angry about it. They want a government that's actually going to protect our borders, protect the interests and security of the British people, and that's not happening under this government. Now, the Conservative government failed as well. We need a radical plan to protect our borders and to stop illegal immigrants from coming into our country, and those that are here need to go.
Well, I think we're all in favour of that, but just if only someone would do it. But there we are. 10:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. I get Tom Slater's thoughts. We're also going to be talking about why the Reform donor, founder of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins, faced threats to remove his OBE because someone didn't like his messages online. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
if you look at the numbers, you know, they peaked in sort of about 2009, and then all through the kind of coalition years under the Tories, the numbers of civil servants went down massively, and then it started to tick up again with the referendum, after the referendum, because they needed lots of thousands of civil servants to push through kind of change as we left the European Union. Then that number increased again during the pandemic, when thousands more were hired to kind of help out to deal with things like the vaccine rollout, all this kind of other stuff, and those numbers have been pretty sticky. They haven't come down at all. So I think obviously we're beyond kind of those Brexit transition, we're beyond the pandemic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's still with me. Now, you were listening to what Andrew Rossendale had to say. Let's just go back to conversation about sort of the freebie gate and the like. Are you exercised about this more and more freebies? Because Andrew Rossendale was, look, people get offered freebies. Yeah. Most people would take freebies or offered freebies. The question is, though, if you're in a position where you do have an influence over someone's the taxation for a company, or that you're the Chancellor or you're the Prime Minister, you are in a position of influence. Why do you think people want you there? They want you there so they can try and have a word in your ear.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't have to be too much of a kind of world-weary cynic to realise that this is how things have been for a very long time.
Yeah.
Everything Andrew Rossendale was saying before is true. People get invited to these things, and partly it's just a kind of perk of the job, to be frank, for a lot of politicians and a lot of people in the media. It's also, as you say, there's a flip side to it. They want you there because they feel they can get something out of this relationship. It could just be looking good, having someone where you can snap a photo of, the head of your charity. Look how important
we are. We've got someone important. Yeah.
X, Y, Z. But it could also be to influence policy. So it's one of those things where even when it's entirely innocent, it can look bad, it can smell bad, it can look corrupt to a lot of people in the public, which is why you've got to be very careful how you do these things.
Indeed.
And in what way.
We should be definitely more careful about who we give honours to, I have to say. It's absolutely fascinating. The multi-millionaire backer of reform, which is Charlie Mullins, OBE, he was threatened with being stripped of that honour over a social media attack on Sir Sadiq Khan, the Labour London mayor, and indeed some other messages he posted online. I have to say, I wasn't that keen on some of the things he said online, certainly not sharing my views. But the Honours Forfeiture Committee for such a thing exists. It accused Charlie Mullins of bringing the honours system into disrepute back in September over comments dating back to 2022, and said they were minded to recommend to His Majesty that your OBE be revoked. Now, Charlie Mullins was on Mike's show a little bit earlier. He was in the studio just before I came on air. He accused Keir Starmer of basically political revenge attack after officials attempted to revoke the honour. He managed, using his lawyers, to fight it. But I'm not entirely sure we can bring the honours system into any more disrepute than it already is. Let's talk to Dr. Philip Kisserly about this. He's a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Very good morning to you, Philip.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, I think, let's face it, we've known since time began, these honours, whether it's a dukedom, an earldom, an OBE, or a sir, a knighthood, a damehood, these things have been handed out to people who do favours for the king, whether or not they supply men for a war, medieval times, or whether they gift a home, or whatever they do. Huge, if you give a load of money to a political party, you're going to get yourself an honour of whatever kind. We know even the king himself, for goodness sake, who supposedly is responsible for handing out the honours. Big question marks about his staff basically offering honours in return for big carrier bags full of cash to Middle Eastern businessmen. So big question mark here. But should Charlie Mullins have been threatened with having his OBE rescinded?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's as you say, isn't it? I can't think of a time when the honour system has been out of disrepute. And, I think of... Sir James Wilson Savile, are the words that come to mind. This is a difficult one because he did say that he wanted Sadiq Khan. He said that someone should kill Sadiq Khan, and now he's trying to defend it in terms of free speech. Wanting someone to be killed is the opposite of free speech. That if there's going to be something that shuts someone up, it's a and
again, do I think that he genuinely wanted Sadiq Khan killed? No, but it's totally an unacceptable, inappropriate, and let's face it, criminal language, isn't it, to say that?
Exactly. So he shouldn't be saying that. And some of the other things he said are very ill-advised as well. So I think the problem here is that he is speaking, and I suppose de facto he's speaking for reform. That's the real problem. And he's just not equipped to do it.
Yes. I'm not entirely convinced why he is being a donor to reform, given that Charlie Mullins and he and I have had many a battle, get on very well personally, but many a battle over Brexit. He wasn't just someone who voted to remain, no issue with that. He campaigned to overturn the referendum result, to basically not enact it. He's a Ramoner, technical term, he's a Ramoner on that issue. So given that one of the key things about the Reform Party is it was a pro-Brexit party at its heart, I find it very strange. But I mean, one of the tweets, he wrote, you're so right about Khan. You're so right to someone. Khan should be in prison, referring to Sadiq Khan. He is equivalent to a spy. Will not be long before Muslims have their own police force. Now, is that appropriate language? And again, he seems to be obsessed with the fact that Sadiq Khan is Muslim. Now, there's a lot of people online who are. Now, I'm of the view that I've got a lot of criticisms of Sadiq Khan. I take them up with him personally, as well as online. None of them involve him being Muslim. His religion, his race, utterly irrelevant to me.
I think one of the things we've really got to do here is focus on what Sadiq Khan does, and there's something else about Carol Vorderman as well, isn't there? That we've got to focus on what she says.
He called misogynistic comments made about the media personality Carol Vorderman about having her breasts, used a different word beginning with T, hanging out, but she does. I mean, she does. Her Instagram account is all pictures of her. Close-ups of her bottom and her boobs. I mean, that's not misogynistic. That's just fair comment as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree, but I'd rather be focusing on what she says, who's funding her, who's she working for, what the lobby groups are. So my point is that all of this stuff it just takes us down the wrong direction, okay? And we're focusing on Charlie Mullins. And yes, he's got lots of money, and in lots of ways, I think he's a great person. I completely disagree with him on Brexit, and he seems very conflicted and confused about where he's going. I think what he should be doing, if he wants to help reform, he should be giving them money, okay? And he should be staying quiet, and he should be allowing the political commentary and the debate and the policy, leave that to the professionals.
Well, I mean, I don't expect you to stay quiet, but the key thing is, I mean, it's one thing taking away an honour because somebody, or not giving an honour to someone has been, got a criminal record, or they're not paying their taxes. We know that taxes is supposed to be the big issue why David Beckham has not had the honour that he so desperately wants. The tax schemes that he's involved in is what the claims have been made. But at the end of the day, people speaking freely, unless criminal action has been brought against them, that shouldn't mean you lose an honour.
No, of course not. And they gave him the honour in the first place. I'm assuming that they knew what he was like and how he spoke and how he expressed himself. Maybe they went out to dinner and they thought, oh, it's going to be great. So again, it's this system which just seems, it seems as though it's run by idiots.
Yeah.
And if you're going to give Charlie Mullins an honour, then you've probably got to expect him to say some...
Exactly. And also, plenty of people on the left say some absolutely outrageous things, especially these lovely actors and actresses, very, very, I would say, violent, threaty things towards people on the right, and no issue about them keeping their honours or indeed appearing on the BBC and the like as well. Dr. Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots more to talk about. Love to hear your thoughts on all the things we're talking about, including Charlie Mullins. I also want to hear about what you think about this intelligence sharing, whether or not we should risk it with the White House, given they're putting everything in online chats. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Lots more to talk about in this hour, and I'm with you all the way until 1 o'clock. And coming up, we're going to talk more about the White House. They've confirmed that a journalist was accidentally added to a secret group chat about classified military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. In the chat, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth complains about pathetic European freeloading. Should we be sharing intelligence with the Americans, given that it might simply end up in a signal chat with any random person? Lucky it was a journalist who kept it quiet until after the airstrikes took place. Lucky that he redacted a lot of the information that could otherwise have been handed to maybe, I don't know, an adversary, an enemy of the state, an enemy of the West. There are quite a lot of them about, including, by the way, the people funding the Houthi rebels, the Iranians. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Plus, Labour will be turning a blind eye to slavery if it blocks a bid to ban ministers from buying solar panels for schools and hospitals, which very likely have been made with forced labour by Uyghur people in China. MPs are going to have a vote on that today, but the government, even though they virtue signal caring desperately about slavery, but only when it happened 200 years ago across the Atlantic, but not that bothered about it happening in China, it would appear. Plus, the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK has set a new record for the first 3 months of the year. About 400 more people came over this year in the first 3 months than last year. Total of 5,847. Bearing in mind, it's still not the heightened months when we see in June, July and August, when we see huge numbers, sometimes even more than 1,000 a day turning up. So another fabulous year ahead of that, guys, to deal with. Smashing the gangs, not working out quite as well as people had hoped. Joining me for all the chat today, I'd like to say, is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Good morning once again to you. There is a lot to talk about, home and abroad. Also, we're talking about, as we just talked about Charlie Mullins and honours. They're like, are you holding out to get an honour, or do you think you say the wrong thing too often?
And I'd be very surprised if I passed their processes or even managed to hold on to it for very long.
I don't know why people want honours. This is Charlie Mullins, front page Telegraph today. He was in the studio with Mike Graham a little bit earlier. He basically had to fight to keep his honour after threats that he was going to have it removed because basically, he'd said some, frankly, very questionable things in my view on social media. Some of them I disagree with. I still think he has a right to say some of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them. I don't think people should say someone should kill Sadiq Khan. Sorry. No, I disagree with virtually everything Sadiq Khan does and stands for. But no, absolutely not. But unless someone has committed a criminal act, people should be allowed to say what they want to say, and then we can judge them how we choose to judge them, surely.
No, absolutely. We can hold those two thoughts in our head at the same time. Is that a lot of what he said was really grim, but at the same time, are we going to create a situation where, by any kind of metric, someone's political views, even if they are quite grim in how they express them, should disqualify them for certain positions, certain honours that they've, were awarded but had nothing to do with their politics often. Yeah. It's a precedent that, if we set it, and we kind of already are in the process of setting it, really, aren't we? That effectively will cleanse out anyone who doesn't fit just an increasingly kind of narrow kind of perspective in terms of these things. And we know that probably happens with the honour system and many other things already.
Who are we kidding?
So let's not have more of it.
Would you want an honour? I'm amazed by how many people are desperate to get honours.
No, I'm with you. I
don't get
just
it.
For a few
there's no honour in
name.
it. And I always think, actually, as much as I love the idea that someone who's been a lollipop lady for 50 years and done a wonderful job gets an honour, that sort of thing. But it is just, I do think it's patting people on the head in a rather patronising way, because basically, if you had billions and you gave, a million quid to the Tories, Labour, Lib Dems or others, you'd have been on that list, 49 years ago.
No.
It's so blatant and obvious. I don't think there's any honour in the honours system anymore.
No, absolutely, because it is that strange mix, isn't it, of people who have been genuine public servants in their communities, who've put in a lot of work, often kind of unsung areas of life. And then there's people who, either because they've become kind of a flash in the pan success, they get one, or because of the fact that, as you say, they've given enough money to a particular political party. It's just
if you've made a load of money as a top business person, that's great, everything. But you've kind of had your reward, right? Because you're on your yacht in the Caribbean. That's kind of your reward. Well done, you. People working as top civil servants. Well, yeah, you've had. I don't see why. I mean, basically, if you work at any level in the civil service now, you get your knighthood at the end of it. I just think it's rather bizarre. I think it's amazing how many MPs have them as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it's inappropriate
at best. It's just status chasing. You've been around the block a few times. I quite fancy having an.
It's just you know what it is. It's just they want to get a good restaurant table. That's what it is.
Does help with that.
They get upgraded on a plane. I honestly.
They make a point of saying OBE after their own name.
Oh, don't.
Things and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I just think there was someone here the other day, genuinely, and I said, do you use your title only to book restaurants? Genuinely said that to me off air, only to book restaurants.
That's the whole system summed up.
Yeah, exactly. There you are then. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about some more important matters. National security. A US journalist, he is a very senior journalist, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, poo-pooed by Donald Trump, knew nothing about this, never heard of this guy. We have these phrases often, so-called journalists. He's a journalist, OK, Jeffrey Goldberg. And he basically gets added in, by accident, it would appear, to a Signal, a social media group, secret chat with the highest level of the US administration, involving the Defence Secretary, the US Vice President, the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And it's, extraordinarily, he's written an article saying the Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. He was sent this chat, he was included in it, and it was discussing conducting airstrikes on Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis. Airstrikes that did then go ahead a few hours later. They killed, on 15th March, 53 people in Yemen in retaliation for strikes on ships in the Red Sea and in the Suez. Now, well, the extraordinary thing about this is, A, that accidentally a journalist was included, B, what was said in that chat. And what it revealed to us was absolute, contempt with which J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, and the Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, have for Europe. And in one of the things, J.D. Vance says to Pete Hegseth, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again, as if they're doing Europe a favour, because the argument being, basically barely any US trade runs through the Suez Canal, but 40% of European trade runs. So basically they were saying, we'll find out a way of making the Europeans pay for this. But the Defence Secretary replies, I fully share your loathing of European freelading. It's pathetic. Now, so the interesting things here is, we have a defence and intelligence security issue here. Should Britain still be sharing vital intelligence with people who are just clearly just having unprotected phone calls that could easily be hacked? Everyone's pretending Signal's so safe. No, it's not. And especially if people are putting the wrong people in. But also revealing behind the scenes what senior figures in the Trump administration actually think of Europe. And when they talk about Europe, they don't just mean the EU, they mean us too. How concerned are you, Tom?
Well, of course it should be a concern. Any breach like this is on such a spectacular scale is something that could really have put people's lives in danger. It seems like this journalist was added to the group entirely accidentally. Yeah. It might not have been the only person who was accidentally added to this particular group. And it's worth stressing, because people might not recognise the names, but Jeffrey Goldberg, from The Atlantic magazine, it would be like Owen Jones finding himself in the Reform UK WhatsApp group or something like that. He's so diametrically opposed to everything that they're doing. If they could let him in, they could let anyone in, a Houthi rebel or something. It's such an incredible... the words fail in terms of what an oversight it is. And I think it does point to a problem, which is that, yes, I think Donald Trump, this time around, he's got a lot of people in his kind of administration, in his cabinet, who are quite colourful characters. A lot of them kind of came with their own sort of... Baggage is one thing, but also the kind of sense that they were good communicators, that they would sell the policy, and whatever Hegseth was the Defence Secretary was basically selected on the basis of his Fox News performances, even though he does have a background in the military and so on. But at the same time, you do need people who are savvy, who are competent, who aren't going to have these kinds of chats where they were talking about actual American operations, when attacks are going to happen, where they're going to happen, who they're going to be targeting.
This journalist, first of all, he did think it might be a hoax, and then he watched it play out in real time, and then he realised it was genuine. But he was very responsible in terms of how he has published this after the fact, redacting crucial information. He was more careful about American security than the people in charge of American security were. Absolutely, and this could potentially put American servicemen and women at risk if you're this kind of loose-lipped or this not unsafe in how you're sharing material. And I think it does point to a problem. You see this with a lot of populist parties who are really connecting with the public because they're saying things that the public haven't heard said by politicians for a very long time. They're actually pledging to do the things the public want. Isn't that such a crazy, radical idea that we've seen these days? But there is a bit of a personnel problem. It is true to say that some of the people who've been elevated via this don't really know what they're doing, and it doesn't help the populist forces, the populist parties, the populist leaders when you just can have one scandal like this after another, because it does matter and it will start to ground down. Or you can just deny it. And let's play a little clip of the Secretary of Defence, Peter Hegseth. He was speaking to reporters in Hawaii when this story broke. Here's what he had to say.
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The NSC said it was authentic.
I mean, it's been confirmed that it was authentic, but he's saying it didn't happen. But it did happen. It's in black and white. I mean, I'm not sure that is going to fly. I'd love to hear from you. Do you think this is serious? I mean, is this any better or worse than MOD officials leaving, eyes-only classified secrets at bus stops and on trains, which seems to be a weekly occurrence? It is extraordinary how often this does happen. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. You can also, of course, send us a message on WhatsApp, and, of course, a message is free on YouTube, but calls are charged at the national rate, and text costs £1, standard network rate message. I just want to bring in a couple of breaking stories this morning, both related to sport, not related to a fine victory by England last night. I mean, we should be beating teams like that, but we did very well, so it's all boding well for our World Cup qualification. But this morning, Sepp Blatter, the former FIFA president, and the French football agent Michel Platini have both been cleared of fraud for a second time. They're accused of fraud, forgery, mismanagement and misappropriation of more than £1.5 million of FIFA money in 2011. There was a first acquittal in July 2022, and that was challenged by the Swiss authorities. Once again, they have been cleared again and are free. But there have been long time allegations of high-level fraud at FIFA, not least in relation to which countries are chosen to host these major tournaments. I mean, it seems to me to be just, I'm not naming any names, but the organisation itself has some deep issues, shall we put it that way, legally? Absolutely. I mean, does anyone really think Qatar was selected purely on the basis of them thinking, this is a great football supporting nation, the fans out there will absolutely love it. The weather conditions will be great. Exactly, perfect for the people running around for more than 90 minutes. It's to say that there have been concerns over corruption within FIFA is an understatement. It's an organisation that almost gives the EU a run for its money in terms of how bad it is where these kind of things are concerned. And even if these particular charges, now that they've had their days in court, haven't stood up, I don't think that will allay any of those concerns, given what we've seen with our own eyes over the years. Very legally, carefully put. Thank you. Thank you. Here's another development, though. The International Olympic Committee. Pretty big questions about them over the years as well. It's almost like these massive big organisations involving international sport and bodies where pretty much every banana republic gets the same say as the countries that are funding everything. It's almost like that's the problem. Just say. But World Athletics has approved the introduction of cheek swabbing to determine if an athlete is biologically female or male. The global body's president, Seb Coe, said the decision taken by the World Athletic Council was further evidence that his organisation would doggedly protect the female category. We've just seen Kirsty Coventry. She is the president of the International Olympic Committee, just beat Seb Coe by a long way, actually, to become the president. It's interesting. Everyone was going, it's fascinating when people were going last week. She's the first woman president of the IOC. And it's like, so you know what a woman is when the president's elected, but you don't know what a woman is when someone is smashing someone in the face or lifting weights or swimming. Isn't that bizarre? Apparently it's really significant that someone is a woman, not a man, apart from when they're actually competing in a physical sport, where being a woman or a man might be relevant. But as I don't know what she has had to say on this, whether she welcomes it or not. But that's a good start, isn't it? Getting some sanity back, because we have seen different bodies, different sports boards taking different views. Donald Trump, I think, again, I'll criticise him on things I think he does wrong. I'll praise him on the things I think he does right. Absolutely brilliant. No, on your passport, your official documents, you're either biologically male or female. End of that. Not having any of what you think you are on a Wednesday. You're male or female. And actually, given that the next Olympics are going to take place in Los Angeles, being very, very, very clear, in the States, that, athletes who claim to be a different sex from the one they actually are to compete. Let's face it, there aren't women competing in men's competitions. There are only men trying to compete in women's competition. Second-rate men trying to get a medal, stealing them from women who should be getting them. And he's basically, he ain't going to allow those people in. I love this. The idea that it's Donald Trump, of all people, who talked about grabbing us by the bit between the legs.
He does know what a woman is.
He does know what a woman is, and he's the one defending us. When all those woke men who goes, I'm a feminist, they're throwing women athletes under the bus. So this is a good move, isn't it?
No, absolutely. It's encouraging that various kind of organisations, particularly sports organisations, are starting to realise that the game is up where this sort of thing is concerned. If you have self-identification, you basically don't have women's sports. The reason that we have men's and women's sports is because otherwise it would completely exclude women from competition for obvious biological reasons, which everyone used to know 5 minutes ago. So it's great. I just wish that it didn't take so long for these things to take place. The rules were changed without anyone really noticing, without there being much public debate or debate within the sporting world. It's just something that, as ever with this ideology, just kind of creeps in when no one's looking, and then you have to have a big bun fight to try and push it out again. But it takes time, but it is encouraging.
Just to fight back for sanity. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Are we getting back to sanity? Did we need someone like Donald Trump to help push it? Was he just sort of jumping on the bandwagon on this? This has always been one of the things. And I still think, absolutely, people say the culture wars don't matter, blah, blah, blah. But the culture war has been one that's launched from the left on the sanity of our nation and America. I mean, these are the two worst countries in terms of that. But the key thing is, absolutely, is that you have to fight back against it, because otherwise we are going to be living in an Orwellian world where we are just forced to pretend we believe absolute, utter, abject nonsense that simply isn't true. And the fact that people have to fight back and need presidential decrees and statements to announce, executive orders to announce that men can't become women and women can't become men, is utterly insane. Utterly insane.
And it's one of those things where, just from the basis of being a society that is supposed to be based on kind of truth, facts, that's how we base policy, that's how we base our lives. The idea that this kind of sort of semi-mystical idea that a man could become a woman and vice versa just by snapping their fingers, the fact that had to be accepted, reflected in documentation, sports, how we structured society, how people's names and information was recorded, the fact that ever happened is going to be something that I think historians look back on and wonder about.
There's going to be the subject. It's going to be the subject of lots of women study for gender critical sort of studies, gender studies. So undergraduates, they're going to be looking into this. Why was this sudden spike in sex and violent crimes committed by women? Why what
is going on with those?
Why were suddenly all these records broken for women's sport? Oh, who knows? Anyway, 11:20 is time. Love to hear your thoughts on that, on everything we're talking about, but in particular about whether Britain should limit military intelligence sharing with the US after Trump's cabinet leaked a group chat about classified military strikes to a journalist. Does that pose concerns for you, or would you, like Dave, our caller earlier about an hour ago, actually just look, you know what? What is there in terms of European values that is worth protecting and defending? He wants Britain to be the 51st US state. He wants to get in line ahead of Canada. They definitely don't want to be the US 51st state. Would you like to be? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch on. Right now, though, it's time to find out how you could be with a chance of winning Oasis tickets to Wembley this summer, plus £10,000.
How do you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping 10 grand and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion.
Very good luck with that. You don't want to miss the gig of the decade. 11:21 is the time. We're going to take a break, then we'll take your calls, look at your messages, and plenty more coming up as well. This is Talk, home of common sense.
Looking to cancel Easter on the grounds of promoting inclusivity. I mean, how can you be promoting inclusivity if you are purposely cancelling not just a religious festival, but part of British culture, but also something that has been celebrated for thousands of years and will continue to be? You know, this is part of our fabric. This is part of our very, very makeup. Now,
it's part of our legal fabric.
Well, legal, yes, it is. But legal,
it is.
Cultural,
it's not a
societal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:25 is the time. Tom Slater's still with me. Coming up, we are going to be talking about solar panels possibly made by slave labour in China. Not an issue, apparently. The government's going to whip their MPs to vote against an amendment to try and prevent that from happening. Because, you know, when you're virtually signaling on green issues, it doesn't really matter who ends up paying, does it? And, of course, the latest Channel migrant figures showing that, yeah, it's going up, not down. So how's that smashing the gangs going? Well, we'll talk to the former head of the UK Border Force about that. Someone who, by the way, has said repeatedly that the Smashing the Gangs plan wasn't going to work. It's almost like the experts know what they're talking about, isn't it? I know. Anyway, let's go to your calls. I asked you to get in touch about, in particular, Britain, whether or not we should limit our military intelligence sharing with the US after Trump's cabinet leaked a group chat about classified military strikes to a journalist. All emerged yesterday, completely denied by Pete Hegseth, the defence secretary for the US, saying it didn't happen. I mean, apart from the fact it clearly did. We've seen the screenshots, and the National Security Advisor admitted it did happen. But let's find out what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Some of your messages coming in on Twitter and or X and text message. Ian says, haha, we don't even have a proper military to share intelligence with anymore. Harsh but fair, Ian. Daniel says we should stop sharing intelligence with Ukraine, not the US. Yeah, another person pointing that out. Claudia says this is not the time to be splitting up with key allies. Susie says, I thought the US said they were stopping sharing their info with us. I don't blame them. No, says Tony, sometimes the truth is hard to take. And Laura says, what happens if the US limits intelligence sharing with the UK? Last time I checked, it wasn't the US that was struggling to find money to invest in their military or intelligence services. No, but we've proved rather more reliable than they have on that front in recent years, have we not? Well, let's go to Simon. He's on the line in Sevenoaks. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Very well. What do you want to say about this then?
Well, not so much on the security issues. I mean, we've got a long-standing arrangement with the US with intelligence sharing and everything
with
like
the
that.
Five Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, to be quite honest, I'm surprised they never cut us off at the knees when you had the Cambridge spy ring and everything back in the 50s.
Yeah, but they've had spy rings as well. We know that we know that the Russians have been able to get people at very high level. I'm sure the Chinese have got people at a very high level in both administrations, frankly.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a debate about whether, how close they are to some of our parliamentarians. But that's another story. But I actually wanted to mention this notion of us becoming the 51st state.
Something that Dave, a caller, mentioned about an hour ago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous notion, really, because if were that to happen, we'd actually be 4 states, I would imagine, with the 4 nations being split up into individual states. And then you've got the anomaly that is England, with a population of, 55, maybe 60 million?
Yeah.
The number of electoral college votes that we have would mean that hardly a president would find it extremely difficult to get elected unless they had the consent of England.
Do you know what? I'm liking this plan even more. This is looking really good. I think we should think about this.
There was a meme that appeared a couple of years back, and it was Make America Great Britain Again, and that would be the route.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell you what, I mean, there's lots of talk about America joining the Commonwealth. Don't know if that would happen, our Commonwealth group of nations, which is just, again, it's simply just a trade and cultural sharing issue. The thing is, they are our closest cousins, and I know we are separated by a language, not just the spelling, but by a lot of things. But we do share a lot of values with Americans. So we are, sort of kind of closest cousins, other than I would say the Canadians, even. But I mean, what do you make of, what Dave said earlier? He says actually there isn't much for the Americans, certainly a Trump White House, to want to defend in terms of our European, what are European values anymore? I mean, I think he's more focusing on the EU, but also under this Labour government.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you've got to look at the US. It's Britain in the 18th century.
Yeah.
So, that's where their values come from.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So fascinating call. I love that. What do you make of that, Tom Slater? We could be the 51st state, but we'd have a huge amount of power. It'd be like, one of those swing states where if we don't vote for him or her, they don't get in.
I think that's the point at which the Americans start to sour on the idea. They probably have to throw that tea back in the harbour again just to cut us off.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's a funny thought experiment, isn't it? But,
I'm loving this. I think we should have all the calls on this. But your calls are welcome on any of the topics, as you always know. 0344 499 1000. Ricky's on the line in London. Ricky, you just wanted to come back on this thing. I thought it was the International Olympic Committee, but the president, Kirsty Coventry, I think hasn't yet commented on this. But this is the World Athletics body. This is the one that's run by Sebastian Coe. He has approved the introduction of cheek swabbing to determine if an athlete is male or female. So instead of self-declaring or what it says on your passport, which you can get by, just simply, turning up and going, yeah, I've been living as a woman for 2 years. I'd like to be a woman, even though you could be a 6'4" bloke with a beard and your tonsure and everything intact. He's saying it should be a cheek swab, i.e. we're actually going to check your chromosomes. Do you welcome that?
Yes, and I will discuss that. I also want to talk about, if you would humour me, you made a comment about Sadiq Khan earlier on.
Yeah.
And, so after I've just give my opinion on what we're talking about now, would you kindly humour me?
Absolutely. What do you want to say, though, on the cheek swabs?
Right, this is massive, Julia.
Yep.
And I'll tell you why, because we now have an acceptable test, a simple test that can determine a person's biological sex. So if ever we were to get to the state where we banned men from women's spaces, women's toilets, it used to be a case of, what are you going to do? Pull my trousers down and check me bits.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to do that. So if ever, this is massive. People don't realise. If ever we got to the stage now in this fight against transgender ideology that we accepted that men should be out of women's spaces. So imagine if there was a case where, you know, a woman was in the toilet, a bloke come in or whatever. So the police would be called, and then what they would do is that simple cheek swab. And then it's over.
I mean, the thing is, you don't get the results instantly, but that would be the proof of the matter. Were you legally or not allowed to be in that space? No, you weren't, because you're biologically a man.
Because it's just such a simple test. It dispels that idea now that what you're going to do, pull my trousers down and check my bits. So this is actually massive, right, in the fight against this transgender.
Okay. I mean, it's always been available. I mean, it never used to be complicated before people were allowed to change their change facts on their official documents, as opposed to, you know, what you want to call yourself on your name badge or what you want to call yourself on social media. I don't really care. But on an official document, I wrote a column for The Sun about this last week, an official document, it should be factual, not a feeling.
Yeah, but the good thing is, with the World Athletics Association now welcoming that as a certified test, that test will be now, a lot of other organisations will use that. Basically, that test
that's what we hope.
Become more widespread.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, because
fantastic.
All the different sports have been doing different things, and we've seen what's happened with the boxing. Again, that wasn't in the Olympics, that wasn't a trans athlete, but it was somebody who quite clearly was mistakenly identified as a girl when he was born. Can you give me a quick comment on Sadiq Khan? You wanted to bring in on that. This is Charlie Mullins had said some things about Sadiq Khan on social media.
It's a hot potato that you don't like to grapple with. So you talked about Sadiq Khan being Muslim. I don't care. It's irrelevant to me. You also said previously it's not about colour. I don't care what colour.
I'm not avoiding a hot potato. Those are my views.
Okay, I'll tell you why. Let me give you the opposite opinion.
Okay.
Colour may not matter to you, but it matters to a lot of other people, Julia.
I know.
And, you know, have you noticed that everything's too white? DEI, they're employing people based on the colour of their skin.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're racist. Yeah, they're racist when they do that. Yeah.
You're going to have to join the majority, because I think that is such a naive view. You're going to have to start joining the majority and realising that actually race matters.
Why does race matter? Why does the colour of someone's skin matter? People's culture matters. Whether people can speak English, whether they adapt. But why does someone's pigmentation in their skin matter? Because it doesn't matter a hoot to me.
It matters because everything that's going on in the country at the moment is based on the colour of our skin.
No, the anti-racism.
So it's a problem for people that are not.
Yes, that's anti-white. That's anti-white racism, and I absolutely think that is a big issue, and it's something we talk about a lot on the show. But I grew up in a world where we would say, the colour didn't matter; it was irrelevant. You, Martin Luther King, you judge people on the content of their character, what they say and what they do, not based on their skin colour. I mean, you're seeing. You're quite right to say it's unfair. Absolutely, all of these woke policies are anti-white, telling white people that they're responsible for all the world's problems and that they're the only people who can be racist. I op-ed for a family in my teenage years, a black family, and they used to refer to other black people using the N-word, and I said, what if I use that language? They said, we'd throw you out. I'm like, oh, interesting that the rules are different, and I would never use that language. So I mean, I'm just saying, I just simply don't accept that colour is the issue. Culture is an issue, language ability, whether people make a contribution to the country, but that's like to do with immigration. If someone is born and bred in this country and they're British, or whether it doesn't matter to me what the colour of their skin is.
Julia, we are 70%, white people are 70% of the population.
I think we're more than that, actually.
Apparently, more than that, right. So look at the grief that we're getting. Yeah. Look at the discrimination that's happening to us.
I accept that.
Majority. So what do you think is going to happen when we're only 50%? Equality, Julia, let me remind you. We all look for equality, but when they get equality, they won't stop there.
When you say they, again, look, I think there are extremists, and in particular, extremist Islamist ideologues who are trying to exploit liberal values in this country to push an Islamist agenda. Those people scare the living daylights out of me. I'd want them. I mean, I wouldn't import any more of them, that's for sure. I'd want them gone. That's very, very, very different from. I mean, there's also got your white hand-wringing liberals who are busy basically just criticising British history and culture and our heritage and in favour of another alternative cultures and heritage, which I do not value as much and I don't think we should bring into our country. But that is very different from people's skin colour.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Julia, breaking news that is Sadiq Khan. Everybody that sees, that looks at this man's action, his behaviour, he is racist. All he's concerned about is pushing, he's furthering the Muslim agenda. You talk about you don't care that he's Muslim, he's married in London. Imagine what would happen if he become Prime Minister in this country. There's something, honestly, Julia, you're so naive. I'm
not remotely naive. I don't think there is a Muslim agenda. There is an Islamist agenda from a minority. It's too big a minority of people in this country, and it's being pushed by the left wings as well. There are massive issues in this country we need to deal with. I don't think, though, because you keep conflating Muslim and skin colour. Those are not the same things, for a start. I'm not being naive. I don't need to have a wake-up call. I know what the threats are to this country, and I don't believe it's to do with skin colour. I really don't. I'm going to have to leave it there because I'm already way over time, so I'm going to have to end this. But I really appreciate you coming on. I want people to be able to have their say. If you agree with Ricky, you disagree with him, do get in touch. 11:37 is the time. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:39 is the time. Tom Slater's still with me. I'm just to give you a quick reaction to our conversation we just had with our caller Ricky.
So this idea that race matters, I mean, it's complete nonsense. I think it was conflating essentially a lot of clear-cut issues that exist in society, problems with multiculturalism, problems with integration, problems
Islamist extremism.
Islamist extremism, absolutely.
These are definitely issues.
Yeah, but these aren't race questions. I mean, race is... I thought we were getting to a point as a country, and I think we generally are, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, well, we were at that point until the anti-racists came in and decided that all whites were racists.
I know, and
that's what
and whilst I don't want to exaggerate the scale of this, I think to the extent that you're seeing a kind of, particularly on the right, a kind of revisiting of a lot of, frankly, kind of race-based and racist arguments, which you're seeing sometimes on social media around these issues and whatever, is kind of in response to that woke racism, if you like, which has cropped up in recent years. Yeah. And I think it's something that was sort of inevitable, but at the same time, it just gets these issues, aside from being poisonous, it just gets these issues entirely the wrong way around. Yeah, insofar as, particularly take someone like Sadiq Khan, it's that's not the issue here. The issue is the policies.
There are millions of issues you could take up with Sadiq Khan in terms of policy.
Policies, by the way, which have been pushed by a procession of white prime ministers, leaders, heads of civil society. Yeah. That's a lot of where this stuff is coming from.
Very interesting. Love to hear your thoughts. Do get in touch. 0244 499 1000. Let's go right now. And apologies for keeping you waiting. Ben Pyle. He's a co-founder of the Climate Debate UK and joins us. A very, very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Apologies for keeping you waiting. I want to talk to you about when we can and when we cannot use slave labour to produce goods in this country, because Labour government very, very opposed to use of slave labour, as we should all be. They've got a very big issue with slavery that happened 200 or 300 years ago. I mean, that they're obsessed with that. Not so bothered, it would seem, when it comes to the Uyghur Muslims in China, kept in slave labour camps, who are producing most of the world's solar panels, because Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, wants to spend £180 million putting solar panels on schools and hospitals. Bearing in mind, most of them do have flat roofs, rather stupidly, in a country where it rains a lot. Lots of those will be coming from China. They produce 80% of the world's solar panels. But he and the government are basically rejecting and urging MPs tonight in a vote to reject a Lord's amendment, which is going to be debated for the great British Energy Bill in the Commons today, basically to prevent any chance that these solar panels having been made with slave labour. So how do we know when we do and don't care about slave labour?
That's a really good question. We've been arguing for a long time that the reason China is so dominant in the renewable sector is only because of European and UK laws that enable it. We've created a market for Chinese goods here, and we created that on the promise that that would create domestic industries, that would kickstart. This is 25 years ago.
Yeah.
They said if we subsidized renewable energy, solar panels and wind turbines, then there would be manufacturers created in Britain to take advantage of those subsidies. And that just hasn't happened. No. What's happened is energy prices have gone up and up and up, and that's affected all of our industries. Meanwhile, China has taken the opposite approach and said, we're going to keep energy prices low, and that's going to enable our manufacturers to exploit markets that are created by
because also one of the reasons their energy prices are low, of course, so it is and slave labour, of course, is also very cheap. Yeah. One of the reasons energy prices are low is because they are often producing solar panels and indeed wind turbines in factories that are powered by coal.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we've done doubly stupid things. So not only do we subsidise the purchase of Chinese goods, we punish the production of cheap energy in the UK, and so that largely involves closing down our coal-fired power stations, and then that creates extra pressure on gas. So when the renewables aren't working, when there's no sunshine, when the wind isn't blowing, there's no electricity. So gas has to pick up the slack, and it has to do more now that we've abolished coal. Yeah. So European and British energy policies have been completely counterproductive, and they've been completely hostile to British industry and to the interests of domestic consumers as well. And now it's become such a priority for the government that they're starting to abandon any other principles that we might have called ethical in the past.
And you would have thought that not using slave labour would be kind of one of the ones you'd want to stick to as a pretty basic one. It is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, they do talk a good game on this, and as I say, I don't understand why they're so much more concerned about slavery that was abolished by Britain hundreds of years ago than they are with slavery that's happening in the here and the now. It's very, very bizarre. Let's also talk, though, about these heat pumps. There are different rules involving heat pumps. I'm still convinced that the heat pump sort of rulings in terms of net zero policies will be thrown out eventually, simply because they are unworkable for most homes. I certainly, I mean, if there's a time when I will absolutely stand my ground, ain't nobody coming into my house and forcing me to have a heat pump. End of. Not happening. But households who are fitting a new heat pump, that has to be done by someone who's certified and trained to do heat pumps. But if it's a new build and there is a requirement that all new builds have heat pumps from later this decade, then there's a real concern that the people putting in those heat pumps could be rogue traders. Tell us what the issue is there.
Well, every government initiative that has sort of been driven us towards the net zero targets, net zero agenda for the last 20 years have ultimately resulted in a lot of people, a lot of chancers jumping into that market. I don't know if you remember. There was a time at which people would start trying to sell you electricity by knocking you on your door, so you could get to switch provider. That was all European legislation designed to sort of integrate markets and so on and so forth. And then there were the boiler upgrade scams. You'd get called endlessly, and the same for solar panels. You get unscrupulous traders who sort of cash in on the government's desire to sort of accelerate one particular sector, and that's going to be true of the heat pump system, as well as as home insulation. All of these things, all of these attempts that the government have made to try and persuade the public to sort of insulate their home, increase their energy efficiency, they've just fallen flat on their face, because most of the public don't actually believe any of these claims, and
well,
most
quite
households
rightly, because
are better at doing the math.
Yeah,
the
a lot
math
of it is
than-
absolutely nonsense. And there have been lots of engineers planning to do it with the idea there'll be a ban on gas boilers in a few years' time. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
It's the same as the China. They're relaxing the ethics on dealing with China, and then they relax the rules that traders are subject to and technicians are subject to. Everything gets put second to the net zero agenda.
Yeah, but basically, carry on pretending it's all going to happen. It's actually most houses in Britain are totally unsuitable for this, because it works fine if your houses in Norway routinely have these heat pumps, but they're built with incredible insulation because, of course, they get to very, very freezing temperatures every single year. We don't have that. Our houses are not built to the same standard. It simply won't work for most people. It involves incredible amount of. It's not just sort of, I'll take my gas boiler out, clunk, put a new boiler in. It's a completely different technology. It involves changing pretty much everything in your home. You're looking at tens of thousands of pounds. Most people simply don't have that money. They're not going to be eligible for these grants. They're not going to do it. The market for second-hand dodgy boilers is going to be huge, and I'll be happily in the queue to get one of those.
That's right. I think no government, in fact, not just this current one, no government has explained to the public how much it's going to cost. But we have got experimental data, which doesn't get published very often, that shows to sort of bring a very modest house, like a local authority 2 up, 2 down, or a former local authority 2 up, 2 down, it's going to cost in the order of £60,000 to make it sort of net zero compliant, and only save about £300 or £400 a year in electricity, and that's without even a heat pump. So add another 10, 15 grand onto that.
The whole thing, Ben, is absolute madness. You've been writing about this for years. You've been fantastic on this, and I mean, we know that. You know that. The public, I think, now know it. I think now the Tories are getting on board, along with Reform UK, been there a long time, anti-net zero. I just don't think it survives the decade. I really don't. Ben Parr, co-founder of Climate Debate UK. Quick word from Tom Slater on this.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the public have started to notice this, and therefore it's only a matter of time before politicians have to take notice. And
it's happened with the EV cars. Don't want to buy them. Absolutely. They don't want to buy them, so they don't buy them.
And there's every time that these policies collide with the public, when they realise what the actual cost of it is going to be, not just for them but for society, that's when you start to see things reined in. And we're in the process of doing that. Slowly, they'll do it at first, but eventually it will get.
It's almost like voters know what they're doing, isn't it? Funny that. There we are. 11:48 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking about the latest Channel migrant figures. I know you're going to be so surprised to find out they haven't gone down. They've gone up instead. I know. And that was after Rishi Sunak stopped the boats. And, of course, as you'll know, Keir Starmer smashed the gangs. Funny that doesn't work, though, isn't it? That's up next. This is Talk.
there's multiple veterans who've served this country sleeping on the streets of Britain. While if you jump the queue, you arrive under illegitimate circumstances, you throw your passport in the sea, you pretend you don't know who you are, you put up in a nice 3-4-star hotel, given a meal voucher and driving lessons. I mean,
but I don't.
It's enough to send normal people around the.
But this is what I meant when I said I don't. To me, the beauty of this station, you know, and you and I will be barking up the same tree. It's common sense to me. It's common sense if you're loaded and you want to help people.
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:52 is the time. I'm delighted to say that Tony Smith has joined us. He's the former head of the UK Border Force. Might or might not know something about how to stop those boats. Rishi Sunak failed to do it. Rishi Sunak was ousted from power. Keir Starmer came into office saying he was going to smash the gangs. Well, it's all gone terribly well, Tony, because we've got the latest figures for the first 3 months of this year, and 5,847 people have arrived. That's the ones we know about, by the way, so far from January, February, March. That, though, is up by about 400 people on the same period in the previous year. So not only have they not got rid of the boat arrivals, it's got worse. Why?
Well, because we're not sending anybody back, Julia.
We weren't doing that anyway.
Well, no, we weren't, but we did with Albania. That was the one example I would point to where we did actually send quite a lot of Albanians back. Look at the figures over the last 4 years.
We had that peak in 2022.
There was a drop, and everyone's saying, "Oh, we've cracked this." Well, we did for Albanians. You won't see them coming on the boats anymore because we did a deal with Albania, and they did take them
You
back.
arrive. You're on a plane home.
You go straight back. We had to get an agreement in place with Albania, which we did, and we had a return. So I'm not saying Albanians aren't coming anymore, but they're not on the boats anymore. They're the ones that are probably slipping through, the ones you said, oh, we don't know about them.
But they're not claiming the asylum. They're not going through that route.
So you have to extend
Can't
that,
do a deal with Syria, with Afghanistan, with Iraq on the same basis and ship people home because the lawyers won't let you.
No, the lawyers won't let you. That's why I was a fan of the Rwanda plan, because actually the lawyers wouldn't let us do that either. In the end,
the Rwanda plan was on such a small scale. You were seeing that as a stepping stone to a mass everyone is processed abroad.
Exactly. You have to tell people they're not going to get to stay in this country, and that message needs to go to Calais and upstream. As soon as they know they're going to be allowed to stay here, they're going to keep coming.
Wait a minute. What about all the drones in the Channel? More police have helped. Let's just fund the entire French police force. Why don't we? What about tackling using all terrorist laws against the organised criminal gangs who are putting people onto those boats? Stopping the production of these large boats that apparently can, but not really, carry 50 people across. What about all of those measures which various governments have tried?
All helpful, but we were already doing that, Julia. We already had the National Crime Agency. Now we've got the Border Security Command. There's some good people working in there, working really hard.
But if it's got a different name, then it must be better.
No, but I mean, it's a really difficult job when you're working upstream. Try and work with France, or seen that with the French police upstream. We still have to get them to arrest people.
When you say upstream, what do you mean?
Further back up to Italy, onto the external borders, back into the Middle East. There's a whole chain of smuggling.
Back into the countries where the smuggling starts.
Kurdistan. This is where the smuggling gangs operate from. It's an international network. And you can... these powers are extraterritorial. I mean, so they are exercisable, but you need the law enforcement agencies in those countries to cooperate. But you're not
going to enforce the law in those countries because a lot of those countries are completely corrupt. The officials are really in on it. You get rid of... I've always said, you get some bloke who's putting people onto boats on the beach in Calais, or even the man behind it all, Mr. Organised top criminal, top dog. You get rid of him or her, it's nearly all him, the next person pops up because there's so much money in it.
Exactly. It's all about the money. It's all about the profits, and that's why you've got to break the business model. So it's not worth it for people to spend this money coming here because they don't get to stay, they don't get put in a hotel, they don't get asylum, they get sent straight back, and that's what we've got to do. We need a deterrent.
But isn't the
issue
why are we still part of the European Convention on Human Rights? But again, even with our own Human Rights Act here, and again, all those conventions that they were brought into the British law already. By the way, a lot of those ideas came came from our law anyway. That's why we've had such a big role in it. While we've still got that, we aren't realistically going to be able to send people back. And even if we can send people back, it'll spend years challenging this. And in that time, we are not able to keep those people locked up all those years. Can't keep tens and tens of thousands of people locked up. We haven't got space for our own prisoners. At which point, the human rights lawyers will say, well, they'll have to be free on the streets, and we'll have to support them, put them in hotels, put them in flats, which is what we've been doing. So what's the answer to that?
Well, we do need to do something about judicial overreach now. So the bill's going through Parliament now. The opposition have put forward some amendments to disapply the human rights laws for immigration and asylum cases.
Labour got a majority.
Well, of course, they're not going to do that. But that's the sort of thing that needs to happen, because some of these judicial cases we're seeing, judicial overreach.
Yes, but is it a problem with the law or with the convention, or is it actually a problem with the judges? Because some of the interpretations of Article 8, particularly the right to family and private life under the European Convention, I think are being outrageously, not just overinterpreted, misinterpreted.
I would like to see an investigation into the judges that are at the first tier tribunal now to find out how they're appointed and are they politically impartial.
Well, they're definitely not, because we know you cannot get to a high level in the... I've got a friend who's a judge. You can't get into a high level of the judiciary unless you basically spout all the woke nonsense, and that will include, obviously, pretty much an open border policy.
Right, so isn't the judiciary supposed to be independent?
Well, God bless you for that.
Politically independent. And if it's not, what are we doing about that? Because you're right, some of these judgments are perverse, absolutely perverse. People are going nuts when they read some of these things. But I mean, I would stand up. The Home Office have refused these people, Julia. People haven't got the Home Office refused them asylum, refused their home rights. They're going to a court to say that decision was wrong.
And an appeal after appeal after appeal after appeal.
And a judge at tribunal is saying, no, this is the application of the law that the government.
What about this idea being mooted about, people shipping people off to the Falklands? I don't know what the people of the Falklands did to deserve having a whole bunch of people arriving from Afghanistan and Syria, but is that a solution?
Well,
do we need to process people somewhere where they don't want to be?
Well, you've got to get offshoring going somehow. That's why Rwanda, there's so much an effort and work went into all these other things, Albania, the Balkans, all these ideas are the poor man's Rwanda. If we'd have got the Safety of Rwanda Act through first time round under the Illegal Migration Act, which was supported by some of the politicians, but actually was not taken up, we wouldn't have been in this mess, I don't think. Of course it wasn't, wouldn't be sending everybody to him, but I think there was a real deterrent there, and we've lost the opportunity now.
Do you have any expectation that under Keir Starmer premiership that there is going to be any action to tackle this issue during the next 4 years?
No, not beyond what they've already said. They've set this out. They're going to smash the gangs. That's their approach. But in terms of the migrants themselves, I don't see a removals deterrent, and therefore I fear this is going to carry on. There's going to be continuing numbers coming across.
Have they sought advice from people like you, people who've actually worked at this level and dealing with this?
So if you want to work for the Home Office, you have to be accepted under a contract as a consultant and an advisor.
So they haven't.
So I have not been working under this administration, no. But I'm very happy to come on your show, Julia, and
give
tell
them
you what I
some
think.
free advice, and very generous of you. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, thank you so much for coming in. Always such wise words. Why don't they listen to him? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, listening on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or watching on your connected device, it is great to have you join us. Great also to have the company of Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Still, get your thoughts actually on what the fabulous Tony Smith had to say just a couple of moments ago. But coming up in this hour, we're going to talk more about the White House, confirming that a journalist was accidentally added to a secret group chat about classified military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. In the chat, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth complains about pathetic European freeloading. Should we still be sharing intelligence with the Americans? Can we trust them? Plus, Labour will be turning a blind eye to slavery if it blocks a bid to ban ministers from buying solar panels for schools and hospitals, which may very likely, all likelihood, be made with forced labour in China. That's what MPs warned last night ahead of that vote today. Plus, parents have attacked a CBeebies show on the BBC, aimed at children, of course, for featuring a gender-neutral raccoon. Of course it has a gender-neutral raccoon. Why would children's programming not have a gender-neutral raccoon as a character? They've claimed that the theme is inappropriate and confusing for children who are at an age where they're still learning how to speak and sit upright and hold a pencil, for goodness sake. Plus, Megan Sussex, as she prefers to be known, has been accused of exploiting her two young children as part of her latest money-making venture. And according to the editor of Vanity Fair, the Duchess of Sussex is slightly adrift on the facts and reality. I would only query the word slightly in that. We're going to talk about all of that, plenty more coming up. I do love that we do have a combination of the nonsense around Meghan and the small matter of military intelligence and wars in terms of that White House WhatsApp, a group on a social media site of Signal. But Tom Slater, before we go to our next guest, talk about a lot of the stuff we're talking about at home, I do want to talk to you just briefly about what Tony Smith had to say about those migrant numbers. The illegal migrant numbers have gone up, and you compare different months because the weather is so different in January as it is from July. But when you look at the first 3 months of this year, the first 3 months of last year, we've had 400 more people turn up this time than last time round. That tells you things are not getting better, they're getting worse. Now, for how long can Labour say, well, you know, we're still working on it?
It's just not going to wash, I think, especially because whether this is right or wrong, because this issue has been going on for so long now, because people have seen these scenes repeated time and time again of people showing up, again, unaccounted for on the south coast of England or elsewhere. There's an impatience with dealing with it. Yet the government can't lean back on the idea that they've only been in power for a short amount of time or whatever. People want this dealt with. I think it's also
people were fed up with that by October, weren't they?
Absolutely. And I think also there's a kind of sense in which this has become a really important test case for whether the government, any government, can exercise any power and influence over this issue whatsoever. Is it always going to be bunged up in the courts? Is it always going to be blocked because of the internal advice from lawyers?
Civil servants from the courts basically are in charge now.
It's become a question of who actually is in charge here. Is it the government elected by the people, or is it unelected judges who have decided that basically anyone has a right to come and to stay here? So it's become really fundamental, and if they can't demonstrate some progress on this, people are going to really start to wonder if anyone can actually do anything about this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll get your thoughts on what my next guest has to say. Delighted to welcome the independent, formerly Labour MP, Rosie Duffield, to the show. Very good afternoon to you, Rosie.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you.
How are you?
Well, very well indeed. Lovely to talk to you. There's quite a lot of news stories that have come on actually since we invited you on, which I wanted to ask you about, including World Athletics, how they will decide whether an athlete can or cannot compete in the women's competitions. But first of all, let's just talk about what's going on in British politics right now. We've got the spring statement tomorrow, and Rachel Reeves. It's not an emergency budget. Oh no, it's definitely a spring statement. She's been boxed in quite a lot by not just world events, what's been going on with Donald Trump and Ukraine and other issues, but of course also by her own budget last October. She hasn't got much room for manoeuvre. If you were advising Rachel Reeves, or if you were in her position as Chancellor, what would you be doing?
Nobody would want me to be Chancellor, Julia, because my grasp of economics is not that great.
I mean, I would think, to be fair, that would be great qualification for the job, because that appears to be the same situation we're in with Rachel Reeves.
Oh gosh. Look, I think the thing is, if you are the Labour Party, people expect you to be the Labour Party. And yes, we know that this election was a bit strange. It was more about change and getting rid of the already established 14 years of Tories. But you would expect that quite a lot of people wanted a Labour government. And this is not remotely a Labour government. All the things that they're doing and saying are just sort of Tory-like, but going wrong. And I don't know anyone that thinks it's all okay.
This is a weird thing because so many people on sort of centre-right of this country were spent their last 14 years complaining that they were, particularly the last 5 years, that they voted for a Tory government and they'd somehow got a Labour-light government. And now we've got Labour people, in your heart and soul, you're a Labour, an MP, Labour supporter, complaining that you've got a Tory-like government. I mean, when people talk about the uni party, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the two main parties, you get the same policies. They're right, aren't they?
Yes, and that's what's wrong with politics, I think. In 2017, for all of the ills of Jeremy Corbyn and everything that went wrong, we had, as Labour, a very red manifesto. The Tories had a typically blue manifesto. People made a very clear choice. And Labour, actually, we came within 12 of the Tory majority.
I know,
now,
it was terrifying.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry about that. But I think the thing is that nobody now knows who stands for what. Where are all our traditional party values? And people, I think, are in flux with all of that and just looking at the same old. And what's the point in that? Keir Starmer's one-word slogan was change. Doesn't seem to be a lot of that.
Yes, well, and also change to what people wondered. I mean, when it comes to, for instance, I would have thought, one of the things that Labour should stand for, and frankly, every political party in this country stand for, is being against slavery, forced labour. Labour seem to be absolutely obsessed with the slavery that Britain helped to abolish a few hundred years ago, the transatlantic slave trade, at great expense to our nation and to taxpayers even until about 10 years ago. And yet, it would appear today in a vote in the House of Commons that's going to be whipped to basically, of course, Labour MPs to vote against a move. The Lords have tabled an amendment to the Great British Energy Bill where basically wanted to make it virtually much, much harder, almost impossible, for solar panels to be purchased by the government for schools and hospitals under a plan from the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband to be purchased from possibly slave labour producers. Now, given that most solar panels in this country in the world are produced by China, and most of the stuff we import is from China in terms of the eco stuff, and 40% of China's production is in the Xinjiang province, where slave labour by Uyghur Muslims is pretty much the main producer of this stuff. Since when is it that your old party, the Labour Party, cares so much about abolished slavery 200 years ago, but doesn't care about actual slavery happening right now to real people alive in this day?
It is quite mind-blowing, isn't it? And I think that is part of Labour's problems. They've got this huge, very well-paid comms team in number 10. But surely this isn't beyond the wit of most people to get the comms right. And, I mean, Theresa May was very famously pushing forward the sort of anti-modern slavery agenda when she was the leader and when she was in the Home Office. I can't believe that the Labour Party thinks it's okay. For a start, why aren't we manufacturing these things in Britain? And why are we helping towards the slave trade in all? It must be, in, like you said, in all other ways, not just these solar panels. It does seem quite bizarre.
I mean, it's more than bizarre. It's obscene, isn't it? Putting virtue signalling over putting solar panels on a primary school over someone literally being a slave.
It is mad. The whole thing is mad. Either let's source them somewhere else, let's make them in Britain, which is what we're supposed to be all about.
We can't make them in Britain because of net zero policies. We want to buy them for Britain because of net zero policies. We can't afford to make them because net zero policies mean that we don't have cheap and abundant energy.
Well, that's just all bonkers, isn't it, frankly? I mean, the messaging is bonkers.
People like me have been pointing this out for some years.
I don't think most people looking at this would make any sense of it whatsoever. I mean, I'll be voting against buying things from Chinese slave trade owners or whatever it is. But
it doesn't seem like a big ask, does it? I mean, again, there's virtue signalling on things and people putting, a flag in their bio on social media. And then there's actually not purchasing things made by slaves. But there we are. Let's talk about two of the other big issues that were big issues at the last election. Immigration. The latest migration figures. We've just been talking to Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. And latest figures, stopping the boats, Rishi Sunak failed. The smash of the gangs. I mean, started last July. It doesn't seem to be going very well so far. far. We've had roughly 400 more people turn up in the first 3 months of this year on those Channel migrant boats than turned up in the first 3 months of last year. It's not going very well. At the end of the day, there ain't no votes in illegal migration. So why on earth is this government not doing anything to stop it?
Good question, and the question that I was asked by the taxi driver who drove me into work this morning, and he was saying, the majority of people he speaks to in his taxi, and taxi drivers are a great weather vane, I think you'll agree, of all the sort of basic political, where most people are actually. And he was saying, I'm not racist, I'm not against asylum seekers from war-torn countries, which absolutely chimes with my constituency, welcoming people who really need refuge into Dover. But I think illegal immigrants are viewed entirely differently, and this government has pledged over and over again it would do better than the last government, and clearly that's not happening.
Yeah, it definitely certainly isn't. And also the culture wars. We're told, these are all started by people like me, people like Nigel Farage, as opposed to people, people like you standing up. Reason why one of the main reasons why you're now an independent MP, not a Labour MP. But the latest row over the culture wars madness and the indoctrination of our children, parents have criticised a BBC CBeebies show. For those who don't know, CBeebies is basically the channel for children. A lot of this, by the way, this television programme is way too young. Children should be seeing shows at that some of these ages, if you ask me. They're featuring a gender-neutral raccoon in an episode of Hey Dougie. Apparently it's an award-winning show. It's aimed at 5-year-olds, and a raccoon called Wren and their siblings are introduced. Gender-neutral language being used, apparently. Apparently, though, a lot of the kids are getting very confused. Parents are confused because, of course, these children are still learning grammar and the like, and they're using gender-neutral language because they want to introduce these concepts to children at the age of 5. Now, it's bad enough what I've been seeing happening in secondary schools in recent years. The pride obsession with pride, but again, it's always about trans. It barely even mentions gay people now. It's all about trans. Teachers facing losing their jobs because they won't use what I would say incorrect.
And nurses.
Nurses as well. But particularly what's going on with kids. As I mentioned on the show yesterday, I've got a friend who's got a kid at nursery. So, a 3-year-old at nursery, and they're having Pride Days at nursery. This stuff is questionable and deeply sinister to me. But what do you make of it as someone who has fought a battle for biological fact to be recognised?
I think gender-neutral raccoons is a new kind of comedy strand to this, isn't it? I've got a young family who watch that show and go to see the live performances when they do tours at theatres, and I will be talking to them at the weekend about what they think about this, because it's fascinating. Gender-neutral raccoons. I just don't really know. I mean, there's lots of women are fascinated by how obsessed the BBC is with drag queens. Every other story being something about a drag queen's view on, I don't know, everything, the price of bread and whatever. But I think this is it's social politics. So there is a point of view, and you are, is the BBC supposed to be neutral? Why is it choosing to go down this particular path? Are they going to have under fives programmes on suffragettes and why women are so vexed at this kind of thing? But I mean, gender-neutral raccoons it's just ridiculous.
And this is the thing, though, because it is political and it is a political ideology, and we are seeing people, and I interview people most weeks on this show, people who are faced losing their jobs, are disciplined. We were speaking to the people acting for the nurse who's being, she's being disciplined at our hospital simply referring to a trans patient who, by the way, was a convicted paedophile who posed as a girl to get boys to send indecent images to him, insisting that it was wrong for her to refer to him as Mr. and he.
Yeah, his rights are more important than hers as a woman working in a place where actually she's probably quite vulnerable. And he's immediately using racist language towards her, being aggressive and hostile. And she's just, her head's probably spinning and thinking, well, someone's got to be on my side. And these days, I'm afraid it just isn't.
No, exactly. I mean, another development today, though, which is hopeful, the World Athletics Body, this is one that is Sebastian Coe is president of, failed to get the International Olympic Committee job last week. The World Athletics has approved the introduction of cheek swabbing to determine if an athlete is biologically female. Now, this decision was taken by the World Athletics Council. They will go about protecting female categories in sport. And this, of course, follows numerous battles in numerous sports, but every different sporting body taking a different view. The International Olympic Committee allowing blatantly, obviously male athletes to take part, not in just in weightlifting a few years back, but also shockingly in boxing, punching women athletes in the face with the full force that a male punch has, which is a lot bigger than a woman's punch. Do you welcome this move?
Absolutely. I'm wearing my XX necklace today, actually, which is just about women in sport being safe. Why is that controversial? Imran Khalif is very obviously a huge, powerful, strong male athlete, and yet we're supposed to kowtow and even allow women to be beaten up live on our television screens in case we offend this man. And if he is so adamant that he is a woman, take the cheek swab. Prove us all wrong. Prove us all to be bigots.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, because the rule has been some, like boxing bodies. They said, no, you've got the wrong chromosomes. You may have been identified as female at birth. You may have had a passport all your life saying that you're female, but you ain't female. Sorry about that. And I'm sure very traumatic to have been raised a girl and then to discover as you grow up to a teenager that actually you're a boy. But, apparently these things do happen. But
we have to have those rules, don't we?
We have to have those rules.
We've got to keep female athletes safe.
But this is the key thing. But it's always been based on what does your identity document say, effectively? What is your legal document? But given, certainly with gender ID, self-ID in many countries, you can be completely fully intact, 6'4" bloke with a beard, and you could just say, I'm a woman, and then you're allowed to compete. And we've seen that in many sports. We've seen it with Leah Thomas in American college swimming. What was interesting, of course, Donald Trump basically saying, no, your official document has to say what you actually are. What do you make, though, the International Olympic Committee? They elected a new president, Kirsty Coventry. Very big deal being made about the fact that she was the first woman. Apparently, her being a woman is really, really important and significant if she's going to be on the International Olympic Committee presidency role, but less so when it comes to actually protecting the female category in sport. Because she, after her election, said, when asked about whether there should be a return to sex testing, she said that this was something she thought was a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge blow to most women athletes, and lots of women I know, like Sharon Davis, who you will have interviewed, who campaign for fairness in women's sports and for women, all these groups that are we really were rooting for Seb Coe, and then we thought, well, a woman coming in, surely she understands the biology. And I think it's possible to work on her. I think she's made hints in the past that she understands, but it's just so hard work, isn't it? We just want those cheek swabs. It's not much to ask.
I still find it extraordinary after all these years, and it is. I mean, last Friday actually was 9 years of talk, and I know since day one we've been talking about this issue. I just find it extraordinary that we are still talking about trying to have policies in sport, in the public sector, in education, in the NHS, in criminal recording, in prisons, you name it, across the board, in our free speech, that we are still battling to get back to just basic sanity and facts that we all knew 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely. When did this start? How come we're still talking about it? And when's it going to end?
Do you think there's any way back to you to the Labour Party?
Potentially. I'm not under this leader, but I don't know that he's going to last the entire distance, if I'm honest.
Oh, really? Because?
I think that many Labour MPs before the election didn't think that Keir Starmer was here for the whole 5 years. He's not doing brilliantly so far, so I'm not sure. We'll see the local election results soon.
He isn't. I mean, there is no method or system for ousting a sitting Prime Minister as Labour leader.
I think we have to do the same as the Tories did and do all those letters. I say we. That doesn't involve me anymore, and I'm enjoying my freedom for the time being.
Who would you prefer? As leader?
I mean, lots of the women have been being briefed very heavily against and elbowed out of the way, but I think Wes Streeting is potentially someone who could be in the wings waiting.
Can I say, there's been a lot of talk about there being sexist briefing against a lot of the women. Is it sexist, or are they just criticising them for not being very good at their jobs?
I don't know, because I'm not on the inner circles, but it does seem odd that the women in the most senior positions are the ones that are constantly being briefed against by the lads.
Well, I mean, they're briefing against the Chancellor for many of the mad decisions she's making. They're briefing against Angela Rayner for some of the things she does and says. But I don't think they're doing it because they're women.
I don't know. I mean, as someone who knows well the lad culture in Number 10 and in the Labour Party, I think it's probably a bit of both, to be honest.
Do you know what the weird thing is? I'd like a bit more sort of sensible lad culture in number 10 than we're getting. I mean, I'd say quite the opposite. But are we in danger of a situation where anyone who criticises a woman, it must be misogynistic?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to work that way when Keir Starmer is calling Kemi, is saying to Kemi Badenoch that she's carping from the sidelines, which seems like quite a sexist thing. He doesn't say.
Why is that sexist?
Well, it just sounds like fishwife. Carping. She's the leader of the opposition.
Carping is a well-known phrase. You could refer to a man doing that.
It's really, he doesn't, does he? Keir Starmer doesn't do that.
There isn't a man who's Tory leader right now.
He doesn't speak to Ed Davey like that. Or, you know, the guy from the SNP, he doesn't. He does speak to Kemi Badenoch. She's in a very senior position. I think it comes across as at least very patronising, actually.
Okay. I mean, I think what's most patronising is he thinks that 0.1% of us have penises. But there we are.
Well, that's true. I don't think he still thinks that.
Apparently. I mean, I'd love it anytime, Keir Starmer, come on the show and tell me about it. Rosie Duffield, absolute pleasure to chat to you. We covered a lot of ground there. Former Labour MP, now an independent MP. Tom Slater, thank you still for being here, listening to all of that. This is the thing. I don't think you can be an MP and speak your mind freely anymore. I think you're better off being an independent MP. You can kind of say what you want to say and say the facts. Rosie Duffield has been treated appallingly by people in senior echelons of Labour. But what did you make of just everything she had to say, really?
No, it's a reminder, isn't it, that the Labour Party supposedly committed to women's rights. She was run out of that party for standing up for women's rights. It's as simple as that.
Sanity.
It was being dressed up as transphobia and all the rest of it. Complete and utter nonsense. And a Labour Party that cannot have someone like Rosie Duffield in it purely for those reasons is not one that is in rude health. So it was always it's one of those things where it'd be interesting to see this play out where the gender issue is concerned. Because on the surface...
It's not the biggest issue.
It's not the biggest issue. But at the same time, for people who are concerned about that, they are saying the right things. Reviews come up. West Street says we'll listen to them. The Cass review said that's going to maintain the recommendations. We're going to keep them in place. But is it this going to creep back? Because West Streeting aside, most people are either signed up to this or just don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. So how that plays out over the next few years
There hasn't been much bravery on this, has there? Yeah, it's fascinating. Your thoughts on everything we've been talking about are always very, very welcome. Do get in touch with us. 0344 499 1000. Particularly would like to hear from you. We haven't even got to that in this half hour about Britain, whether or not Britain should limit our military intelligence sharing with the US after Trump's cabinet leaked a group chat about classified military strikes to journalists. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
This is a 6-foot-tall transgender woman, patient, X they're calling him. and I won't get sacked for misgendering somebody, who was admitted to hospital with, get this here, a urinary problem. Okay, so one of the possible treatments for that person was the fitting of a catheter. Okay, so let's just think about how important biological sex is in that instance.
Good point. You couldn't make that bit up of the story, really, could you?
On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much for joining me. Tom Slater's still with me. Just been talking about this announcement from World Athletics about basically doing cheek swabs to establish basically whether someone is physically male or female, to decide which category of sport they're allowed to take part in. The International Olympic Committee hasn't confirmed they want to do that. In fact, the new president, though being a woman herself, thinks that would be a bad idea. But let's see if that does actually happen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Certainly welcomed by Rosie Duffield, former Labour, now an independent MP. And Georgina is on the line. And Georgina, you wanted to talk about this as well. Very good morning to you. Afternoon, sorry, to you.
Good afternoon, my darling. You look wonderful as ever. I just want to say it's a sorry day when common sense is an uncommon thing. I mean, this is a man, okay? He can have all the operations, he can wear the best foundation, he can have his hair done, but DNA-wise, he is still a man. I mean, if you gave him our contractions in childbirth on the TENS machine, I'm quite sure he'd change his mind about being a woman. Or giving...
Oh, I know. I had loads of drugs. I was absolutely fine. But the point is, actually, most of the athletes, trans athletes and other athletes claiming to be female when they're not, they don't actually have any, they haven't had surgery, they haven't taken any hormones, they haven't done anything of the sort.
Well, there you go. They are a man, and they are up against our girls who have trained so hard to get where they are. I mean, how are we going to make this fair, Julia? Are we going to give our girls steroids to bring them up to the mark of having the strength of a man?
Well, that's the reason why Sharon Davies talks about this so much, because she's Olympic medal winning, but not a gold, because no one could win a gold if you weren't one of the Eastern European teams, East German teams, who were just being absolutely, pounded full of steroids. Very damaging for their health, but it meant they won every medal going. And that's the difference. And the difference between a man and a woman is way greater than a woman on steroids against a woman not on steroids.
Yes, but darling, is there not a word for that? Is that not called cheating?
I think that is the word we're looking for. That's the thing.
So this has got to be stopped. It is totally unfair. I mean, if these transgender people want to compete, great. Have a transgender competition.
No, because a trans competition, they're entitled to compete. They just have to compete in their sex category. A trans competition would just be more men winning medals. There'd be no woman who wins a medal.
Yeah, but we don't let them identify as women. Listen, Julia, if you haven't got a cervix and ovaries, I mean, I know our Prime Minister thinks that men can have them, but you cannot, okay? We are made a different way. Women are women, men are men.
It's just that simple.
It's as simple as that.
It's again, the fact that we're still talking about this all these years on absolutely blows my mind. It really, really does. Thank you very much indeed for that, Georgina. Just some breaking news. This interestingly, by the way, ahead of our competition rule for actually getting Oasis tickets, but you'll be able to get them under our competition plus £10,000. But the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, they said they are concerned that Ticketmaster's approach to selling Oasis tickets may have misled fans. This is following the controversy over dynamic ticket prices. So we're told what the prices were, but actually when there was massive demand, ticket prices went up. They weren't actually, all at the same, the price at which they were originally advertised. I don't know, Tom Slater, did you attempt to get tickets for Oasis?
I didn't know. Not a big Oasis fan.
Not a big fan. I mean, I've seen them live anyway myself. So my husband, he got up, whatever the day it was, got up early, sat there, just put it on the computer, sat in the queue, 550 million in the queue, and I think we got to front about 5.5 hours later, and then the tickets were 350 quid each, and they were up in the gods. I mean, we were barely in Wembley Stadium, to be honest with you. We were probably closer sitting at home in North London than we were in the stadium, and we'd spent, that's too much. But again, the prices, we weren't looking for £350 tickets. We weren't, maybe you get that in a box. Maybe that's sort of ticket Rachel Reeves would get. I don't know. or Keir Starmer.
Her tickets would be far more expensive.
They would cost far more. But, but maybe if I'm in the front row, I'm thinking 350, but not way back. I mean, literally at the back of the stadium, probably behind a pillar. But so Competition and Markets Authority, basically, there have been a lot of upset about how Ticketmaster sold this. It was really well publicised. Yeah. But actually, the price of the tickets, when you actually got to the front of the queue, was not what you'd been led to believe it was. We do need to tackle this issue, don't we?
I think so. Like how you want to tackle that, I suppose, is where the disagreement might be. But this is just sort of grim and exploitative, really. And I think actually a lot of the time the musicians and the artists themselves have more sway in this.
Well, they say I knew nothing about this.
But at the same time, they do have pressure to exert. The amount of money that Ticketmaster and all the rest of it are going to make out of this tour, if they wanted to put their foot down and say, look, you're not selling a ticket for more than X, Y, Z, they could have had more leverage than they're letting on.
Yeah,
so
I simply do not accept Oasis had no idea.
They might not want to get dragged into that. That's fine.
I'm sure their management.
Don't pretend like you've got no sway whatsoever, because you absolutely
do. I did have an issue with it. You know, even like Taylor Swift, and I know loads of people who went to her concerts. Apparently, a great show, everyone had a lovely time. The cost of some of those tickets was off the scale, and if you're a family, you know, mum and dad taking 2 kids, you were looking at just, I mean, huge sums of money. I know it's optional, but still.
But it's a big problem in the sense that this is supposed to be like pop music. It's supposed to be accessible. It's supposed to be, kids want to go to these shows, like the Taylor Swift shows or whatever. The point it becomes kind of prohibitively expensive is a huge issue.
The point it becomes like going to the Royal Opera House.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. It shouldn't be something that's just to preserve the people who know how to game Ticketmaster and have a few £100s.
That said, football tickets are pretty off the scale for a lot of people now.
Issue,
they really are. Anyway, look, well, your chance to win, if you didn't get, like me, get Oasis tickets last time round, your chance now to find out how you could be with a chance of winning Oasis tickets at Wembley and £10,000 this summer.
How'd you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping 10 grand and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus 1 standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion.
Well, very, very good luck with that. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk about that signal chat that got from the top Trump White House top team about a military strike on Houthi rebels in Yemen and how it got sent out to a journalist. We'll talk about the security implications for that with Dr. Jamie Shea. He's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary General at NATO. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:37 is the time. Let's talk more right now about the extraordinary situation where a very high-level group chat on Signal, social media, between very senior figures in Trump's cabinet was leaked to a journalist, and it concerned a classified military strike. Well, let's talk about this with Dr. Jamie Shea. He's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary-General for Emerging Security Challenges at NATO. A very good afternoon to you, Jamie.
Good afternoon, Julia.
First of all,
thanks for getting my formal title correct. It's a very long one.
It's a very long one. I mean, I haven't got time for the rest of the interview now. Jamie, I mean, certainly this is. I would say this is certainly one of those emerging security challenges. Just to get people up to speed on what happened. This is a situation where Trump officials, I mean, from the at the very, very highest level, we are talking about the Vice President J.D. Vance, the Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, all added into a group chat on Signal. It's supposed to be very secure, but someone was added who shouldn't have been added. That person was Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, very much on the left of the Democrat side of politics in America. And it was all about the impending military strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. And we had some extraordinary revelations in there, in particular what J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth think about Europe, talking about just hate bailing Europe out again, and I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. Now, quite apart from that, do you think, as someone who had a job involving the emergency security challenges, is this an emerging security challenge that these conversations are taking place on Signal with a random journalist added in? How much of a security risk is that?
Well, of course, it's an enormous security risk. Julia, you'll remember a couple of years ago, the Republicans completely lambasted Hillary Clinton and even wanted her to be prosecuted when she was Secretary of State for also using commercial communications rather than US intelligence, official government communications for her communications at the time. And that affair rumbled on for years. So it's quite interesting. Yeah. The kettle, of course, calling the pot black.
She, of course, responded to this with the words, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, no, she did indeed. So no, it's a very important security lapse, and it's quite extraordinary that these senior government officials should be using a commercial chat service, Signal, to communicate this sensitive information. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defence, so you referred to him as one of the people on the call. He's been arriving in the Philippines, and when he arrived, he played it all down and said that no operational information had been given.
Let me interrupt, Jamie.
Seem to be the case.
Jamie, let me actually play you a clip. Actually, I think he's arriving in Hawaii. Pete Hegseth, the US Secretary of Defence, when questioned about this. By the way, this has already been confirmed that this is genuine, this chat. This is what Pete Hegseth had to say.
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The NSC said it was authentic.
So he's categorically saying no one was doing that, but we can see this exchange of views. If you say this shouldn't have been on this sort of commercial site, even though I believe Signal is supposed to be very secure, A, how secure is Signal, even if a journalist wasn't added into the group chat by accident, but B, where should these conversations normally be taking place?
Well, these conversations, of course, should be taking place on in communications run by the US government, operated by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's, if you like, intelligence service, and of course, on highly classified networks, which is normally the case. So it's quite extraordinary that they were using Signal. And of course, no commercial platform is ever going to be completely secure against very sophisticated government cyber intercepts. Russia, China, Iran, other countries, North Korea, have very sophisticated capabilities in this area. So it's clearly a lapse. Of course, the question is will there be a thorough investigation, or will it all be dismissed by the Department of Justice? Of course, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has said that it's never going to be repeated again. So obviously they're going to learn lessons from all of this. So I doubt if this is going to be the rule. But of course, it's also a bit depressing, as you referred to, about what they say about the Europeans.
Well, yeah, I want to come on to that.
True as well. well.
I do want to come on to that, but just first of all, I just want to keep on the issue there in terms of the security, because judging by the conversation as reported by this journalist, he did actually redact a lot of information, and he did wait until after
his patriotic duty not to reveal any secrets.
Absolutely, they were very unlucky that he was accidentally added, but they were very lucky that it was someone like him and not someone who could have actually caused problems. Judging by the tone of the conversation, it certainly doesn't suggest this is the first and only time. They won't go for once, just this random occasion, we're going to do this. We've seen American forces being used in other airstrikes as well. This is a very big concern that this has been the norm under this presidency. I don't think there's any reason to think they would stop doing this. They'll just simply try and make sure they haven't got a journalist in their ranks. How dangerous is that in terms of us sharing our intelligence with them?
Well, of course, there's also been a lot of speculation since Tulsi Gabbard was nominated to head the U.S. intelligence services, given her previous close relationship with Vladimir Putin and also sympathy for Bashar al-Assad, the outgoing leader of Syria, that she could obviously compromise possibly intelligence sharing in the Five Eyes. But on the other hand, there's also been talk that President Trump, who doesn't like Canada at the moment, might sort of take other countries out of the Five Eyes agreement. So it's a little bit mutual at the moment, but clearly it isn't conducive to creating the climate of trust which you were referring to. But on the other hand, I imagine that things will be patched up and intelligence sharing will continue because, of course, it's important for all of the sides.
Well, indeed. And you mentioned again, let's come on to, as you were touching on, the revelation of what these people think in terms of Europe. I hate bailing Europe out again, as if stopping Houthi rebels funded by Iran, certainly an enemy of America and their closest ally Israel, as if taking on those Houthi rebels who are bombing commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal isn't actually in American interest, which is crazy. But talking about the European freeloading, loathing the European freeloading. That's what the Defence Secretary said. Sharing, he said, I fully share your loathing. The idea that the Vice President of the United States and the Defence Secretary of the United States, and one assumes also the President in that, which is why he chose these people, have a loathing of European freeloading is a worry. Or is this a reasonable expression of, well, frankly, European countries for many decades relying on the US taxpayer to fund their defences?
Well, there is, of course, some truth in the Europeans relying for too long on the United States to fund European defence. But, of course, these people do know that for some years now, Europe has been doing something about it, particularly the UK, by raising defence budgets, taking NATO commitments more seriously, modernising forces. So, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, as a very famous American politician once said, but everybody is not entitled to their own facts, Julia. And, of course, also, the fact is that the Europeans are doing their bit against the Houthis. The European Union has had a task force in the Red Sea for over a year now, protecting shipping. The UK has been involved also in strikes against Houthi targets on a couple of occasions. Europe has been imposing sanctions on Iran, and I quite agree with you, Julia. The Houthis have been attacking Israel. In fact, they tried to lob a missile into Tel Aviv just a couple of days ago, and to the extent that the United States is committed to defend Israel, it also, of course, has to be committed against the Houthis. So, it's one thing to sort of be a little bit insulting, but to really just disregard the basic facts of what Europe is doing.
That's always the worry.
Profoundly unfair, particularly from senior people.
That's always my concern, Jamie Shea, is that actually a lot of the time they simply are not dealing with the actual facts on the ground. And we know we've seen with Steve Witkoff, the US envoy on Ukraine ceasefire. I mean, Donald Trump's envoy, he apparently was in this group and he was in Russia at the time, so that's a bit of a concern. But not knowing some basic facts about Ukrainian geography is a bit of a stop spouting Kremlin talking points. Just so you know, there are news reports coming out in the last few moments that the leak of this top secret war plans to the journalists may lead to the dismissal of the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. He was the man who actually accidentally put this journalist into that group. Do you think that will be, look, he gets sacked, they all move on? Do you think that's what's going to happen?
Well, it's obviously a grave security breach, so it shouldn't simply be swept under the carpet. It could have, of course, been much more damaging, as you mentioned yourself. And, of course, it could have exposed the pilots involved in this operation. whose operation would have been disclosed are to high risk. And of course, the first duty of a government in any military operation is to protect the servicemen and women who carried out the operation. So there should be some sort of responsibility, not for me to say, of course, how this should be done. The important thing is, of course, to learn the lesson for not repeating that
Absolutely. And again, no one at our MOD seems to have ever learnt the lessons to not take classified documents out and leave them on trains or at bus stops. But there we are. We live and learn. Such a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. Jamie Shea there. Thank you very much, formerly at NATO. I won't do the full job title this time. Tom Slater, your thoughts on what Jamie Shea said, because he's echoing a lot of my concerns about, this is actually a massive security risk.
No, absolutely. And, at the same time, you can point out that there have been breaches in the past. There were Hillary Clinton's emails. We do, as we say, have a kind of... Every year it seems like there's some big bus stop scandal involving classified documents in this country. But that doesn't mean that we should be uninterested in it here, obviously. And also the way in which they're just be so dishonest about this now, it's just not going to wash. You can't take people for mugs like that.
I mean, again, it seems to work for a lot of people on social media, and it's amazing. And again, the number of people who are spouting this view that, they'd leaked it deliberately. No, it was done in real time. This guy was sitting there watching this in real time. This is an abject nonsense. It didn't happen and it was done deliberately. I mean, again, you were saying to me, this is actually a form of Trump derangement syndrome.
Sort of in reverse,
It's in reverse. So when someone like me says, I agree with him on X, Y and Z, but I disagree with him on this thing, I've got Trump derangement syndrome, but somebody who just blindly says everything they do must be a clever move in this game of 4D chess. Utterly delusional. Anyway, and more from Tom coming up. Up next, going to talk to the brilliant royal biographer Angela Levin, as Meghan Sussex, as she likes to be known. Fair enough, she hasn't used her single name for quite a long time. That she's been accused of exploiting her and Harry's children to promote her new clothes line. I know. Again, one of those things that I'm as shocked as you are about. We'll talk about that up next with Angela. This is Talk, Home and Common Sense.
Absolutely right. There's loads of money in it for these people.
800 quid a day.
Extraordinary, isn't it? And the problem we've got is that the Prime Minister built his whole career on this kind of stuff. And this is why he's in such a bind. He can't really go against it, not only because he'll stop being invited to fancy lefty-loving dinner parties in Islington and all the rest of it, but that his whole career will be proven to have been built on a load of cobblers. That's the problem, right? Is this ECHR here in the room with us now? You'd have to ask him.
On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. 12:51 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Tom Slater's still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. We're joined now by royal biographer Angela Levin. Very, very good afternoon to you, Angela.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Lovely to speak to you. It's been a long time. Now, we're talking about, guess who? Guess who, everybody? Meghan. Yeah, exactly. Meghan Sussex, as she likes to be known. Fair enough. It's her married name, apparently. I'm sure she prefers Duchess. But anyway, she has been accused of exploiting her 2 young children. This is Archie, aged 5, Lilibet, aged 3. After she posted on her Instagram account pictures of her with the kids. We never see their faces. We mustn't know what they look like. But posted a picture. And then an hour later, launches a new clothing range as part of her As Ever range that she is selling as part of her whole lifestyle brand. This is so blatant and obvious, isn't it? 2 kids, everyone. She knows people are going to be looking for photos of her with the kids. She knows perfectly well there'll be a load of traffic going onto her Instagram site from the people who are obsessed with this stuff, and she'll hopefully sell more stuff. It is tacky, isn't it?
Well, it's awful. I mean, my feeling is this, that with love Meghan is actually, I'll do what I bloody well like Meghan. And I think that's her attitude now. I think she's built up a lot of confidence and she wants to destroy the Queen, the King, William, Catherine.
But she's not doing anything to destroy them. I mean, her selling a bunch of homemade jam and some dresses for 700 quid or whatever, that's not... That was the point of leaving the royal family, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, but it's the way that you do it, not exactly what you do. And also to go think about Harry. Harry's main thing is that he didn't want anyone to use any social media or actually show the children. He's terrified that something could happen to them. I mean, he's still living in the life of his death of his mother, Princess Diana. And the 2 things he really, really cares about, Meghan's blown them away. And because she doesn't care 2 hoots what he thinks. He's hardly there now.
Oh, really? Because we're told that he's... I mean, you know, he barely featured in her latest series. I'm told only lasted 5 minutes. It was too awful. But is he not at home with them very often?
No, I mean, I don't think that's right at all. If he is at home, he's not actually doing anything.
How do we know? We don't know that.
We do know that because he's never in anything, is he? He's not actually doing anything with her.
But that's different, isn't it? He might be saying, I mean, I don't bring my husband to work either.
No, but your husband's got a whole job and he knows you care for him and vice versa.
Well,
but she is treating him as if he's a servant. Frankly,
you don't like that. Now you're rather fond of Harry because you spent a lot of time with him when you were interviewing him.
I'm not fond of him now.
Well, you were when you wrote when you wrote that biography. Look, we may not all like people who people we know marry, of course. But this is the thing. The big thing the big argument they gave was we don't want to be part of the royal family. We don't want to be part of this circus. We want to go and have a private life. And then of course he sold his memoir, giving away every possible, even personal conversations with his brother. Every single secret about his life. They did a Netflix documentary even featuring video of their engagement. I mean, for the moment in private engagement. I mean, every single private moment you could possibly give away. But a lot of people would draw the line at the kids. I mean, I'm amazed by people who just sort of sell their kids on social media. An awful lot of celebs do it. The royals, let's face it, Kate and William, part of the gig is you've got your royal kids, you've got, they're going to be, one of them's going to inherit the throne eventually. They are there for the public to see, but it's all it's done with an agreement with the British media, isn't it?
Let me just say, if you see little Archie, he is absolutely clinging on to Meghan. And I thought to myself, that's not the way a child of about 5 would be. I think he's very stressed by this. He's probably been told he mustn't turn round. On the other hand, he wanted to be picked up perhaps rather than his sister. And I just felt it was a very uncomfortable picture.
I didn't read into that. I just thought it was just more fakery, which is we're just putting our family picture up. We're giving you a little glimpse, a little bit of titillation. Here are the kids, but you don't get to see them properly game playing, power playing, using the kids, but then saying, oh, but I haven't really used them. But by the way, quite by coincidence, an hour later, I'd like to sell you some clothing at a ridiculous overpriced price.
Yeah. I think actually this clothing, she's going to get 10% to 30% of it. And I'm not sure how many people are going to be really keen of letting her have that, who's already a millionaire. I mean, she's very greedy and she's very...
well, I don't know. I mean, I often spend £1,068 on a dress and £600 for a pair of shoes and the like. I mean, I don't know. I mean, huge amounts of things. I have to say, I mean, there's an element where Meghan can't do right for doing wrong, because we'll criticise her if she doesn't do anything, and if she tries to actually, as a private citizen, run a company, run a brand, that we criticise her for that.
She wants both, and you can't have that. I mean, the thing is that with this selling, you can sell if you're not cashing in on royal links, but she's actually using her full title, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex.
That's the issue. You can't do that. Yeah. Angela Levin, thank you very much indeed, royal biographer Angela Levin. I mean, she is very harsh on those two. Tom Slater, I can't imagine that what Harry and Meghan do crosses your mind from one year to the next.
Well, unfortunately,
I just make you talk about it, don't I?
But anyone in the media is forced to follow the ins and outs of these two quite unlikable characters' lives. But that's what they've inflicted upon us. We didn't ask for this.
It was their choice. I would have loved it if they'd gone away and said, we don't need to do the royal family.
Absolutely.
We're going to go off and live a private life and carry on our own.
They
had 20 million in the bank. They could have... Genuinely, if you can't live on 20 million, you can't manage your budget.
The thing is, you can't join the royal family and not expect to be criticised. You also can't make a big break with the royal family and not expect to be criticised. Yeah. You also can't, if you're trying to make...
Especially when you claim they're racist.
Absolutely. And if you're trying to make your entire celebrity and businesses about you as a brand, then if people might take against that.
And if people don't like you... I mean, I just can't imagine why that American Riviera brand didn't, whatever, American Riviera Orchard. My British seaside allotment brand didn't take off, but I didn't expect it to.
Despite your best efforts.
Despite my best efforts. Tom Slater, thank you very much. I love making him talk about royals. Ian Collins, so have you got a lifestyle brand coming?
Well, my entire house is full with Riviera Orchard stuff. Do you know, I don't even know what they make. Is it